3 OSC meeting. We have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. McBride,
Second.
second by Ms. Lensing. Any comments, questions, corrections to the minutes? All in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay.
I wasn't present, so
One
abstain.
pass.
One pass.
Minutes are approved. I want to welcome everybody to our student achieve, or this is operations meeting, which is up first this evening. So just as a reminder, we'll go through kind of the items. So there's a discussion item. All the other items are listed for information. One of the things that we'll do is as we go through, board members, community members, if you have a question about a specific item when we get to it, please raise your hand and I will be able to, and wait for myself to call on you. Okay, go ahead, Deputy Moulton.
All right. Thank you, Board President, board members, superintendent, staff, community members. Thank you for being here this evening. The first item on the agenda is the Lincoln Center exterior wall. We do have some information. It's been a little while since we brought this item forward. So we wanted to share some information with you and hopefully get some direction based on recommendations we have. Now, if you all will recall, last year at this time in September, we did provide some preliminary recommendations before we went to the landmark status with the city of Waukegan. So a lot of the images and the verbiage you see in this presentation is just the same as what we provided before, but we have made some edits to some slides, and I will highlight that. So a little bit about the wall that's at this location. It is a brick wall. It's been here about 100 years, a little over 100 years, and that's what we're going to be discussing this evening. Next slide, please. So, functionality and appearance. So this is an aesthetic wall. It serves no security function. It borders a portion of our property, not the whole Sheridan roadside, but a portion of it. Its current state lacks character. It has been damaged, which I will get to as well, but we have had some concerns expressed by the city and residential neighbors that it is unsightly in its current condition, and this was even prior to some of the more recent incidents. Next slide, please. So deterioration. These photos were taken at this time last year, and they are in the same condition or a little bit worse because of the freeze and thaw that's happened since last winter. There's long-term maintenance that has not been done to this wall for years and years and years, which is why it's in condition. So outside of the holes that exist from the vehicle accidents, there's brick and mortar joints, etc., that have had water damage, and we've had some that have collapsed over time that we've had to remove the broken bricks. Next slide, please. So these are the two damaged areas, one in December of 2021 and one in January of 2022. Again, this is information that's been provided before from vehicles. And this slide is new, the timeline to date. Thank you, Mr. White. So we did bring this information with recommendations last September. There was a landmark application filed with the city of Waukegan in October 2022. At the same time, the Board of Education provided a resolution regarding your petition on the landmark application because the Board of Education was not the petitioner. And it was important that the city of Waukegan hear from the owner. And then ultimately in February of 2023, that landmark application was denied by the City Council. So we're here this evening and we've heard concerns, even recent concerns regarding the condition of the wall. We're here to discuss a couple of options. We're going to provide two options. The first option is the recommended option. As you can see on the verbiage on the screen, this is to remove the wall and replace it with an ornamental fence with brick columns, which would extend further south to the property line, kind of where the Sheridan Road curves in front of the property. And we do have an image here for you, but I will say, based on the building envelope engineer that we had take a look at it last year and more recently, they're estimating approximately $250,000 for this work for what we would be proposing. And if you could go to the next slide, this is to give you a visual of this recommended option. Now, you've probably seen this a couple houses south of our property, as well as near Great Lakes Naval Base. This is an ornamental fence with brick columns, approximately 30 to 40 feet spread apart. Now, I will say that if this option is supported by the Board of Education, we will need to go back to the city of Waukegan for a variance based on the height of a fence. If it's more than 4 feet and it's within 30 feet of the road, which this would be, we would need to go back and do that process again. And we would build that into the timeline. But this is a visual for the recommended option. And again, this would extend from 330 feet to 460 feet, and it'd get us much closer to the south end of the property. So this would go north to south. So why replace with new design? We want to maintain the aesthetics of the front of the property, enhance the entrance, and extend the current footprint so it doesn't stop about 60 feet short of the south edge of the property line. What we would do, we would try to make this as cost neutral as possible, because there are going to be some costs to remove the current fence and make it safe, or there would be costs to make necessary repairs if that were an option, but that's not the option we're recommending. We're trying to make it cost neutral because we do have some provisions from our insurance provider that reimbursement for the value of a repair as well as engineering costs, we could get reimbursed for that from our provider. So that's why we're looking at this as a potential new design, because there's currently a fence that exists there now. Next slide, please. Now this next option is an alternative option for the wall, and this would be to remove the wall. Just to remove the wall, leave the entry pillars, either do some landscaping or maybe put some shrubs where the wall is, but this would not be re-erecting a new designed wall in its place. Now we do have a footnote here, so the cost $40,000 to $50,000, that's primarily labor. We do have a footnote here that a community member has expressed interest in removing and relocating some portions of the wall, which would reduce the cost to the district if that were to be approved. And if this were the option we were going to go with, then we would make a recommendation and ask for support to go to our legal counsel to draw up some documentation to support that happening. Also linked within this slide here are the various options from our architect to either design and replace the wall or remove the wall and not replace it at all with landscaping. So that's itemized at the bottom of this slide in a link. Next slide, please. So this is a visualization of the alternate option. If you can see the image on the left, hopefully you can see it on the screens in front of you, Board of Education. With shrubs, you have the image on the left-hand side, and without shrubs, just to go with sod, would be the image on the right-hand side. We did ask the question, would we need to go for a variance application if we were to do some landscaping, some shrubbery in front of the property similar to a fence? And at this point in time, what we were told was the new shrubs would need to be 18 to 36 inches high at the time of planting, but outside of that, didn't see anything as far as provisions that would restrict us or prevent us from doing this option if we were to go with it. Next steps. We would be asking for approval to proceed with the recommended option or the alternate option, because again, we have heard concerns about the condition of the wall in its current state and it standing as is. We'd be looking to bid out one of the two options next month, do the demolition next month, provide a recommendation with a contract vendor in November, start the application process with the City of Waukegan in November, with approval in February, and construction of a new fence or wall in March or April once we're in the spring season. And again, the last slide on this PowerPoint is the salvaging of the bricks, because we did get requests for that when we brought this up last year. So we'd still be looking to do that for those who would be interested. And Mr. Alizakis' office did record the inquiries regarding that. And we, as you can see, we have several bricks out there that can go to a good home if individuals request it for historical reasons. So at this point in time, we have two options on that we're presenting to you. One is to, and if Mr. White, if you could go back to the images, one is to remove the wall in its current condition, design a wall with pillars and ornamental fencing that would be 6-foot ornamental fencing, 7-foot pillars, or the second option, remove the wall and just restore it with natural landscaping or sod.
Questions?
Yes.
Yeah, I got
Go ahead, Mr. Cooper.
I was doing the pros and cons of this, just like you was, and you talked about the cost, $250,000, but, what is our insurance paying towards that?
Mr. McBride, can you use the microphone?
And then I'll go to the second question. What is our insurance paying towards the $250,000?
Sure. So the insurance would pay the value of the repairs and the value of the engineering fees. So we would need to, when we bid this out, we would need to ask for the cost from the vendors, what it would take to repair. Now, I know when we initially brought this forward, I think it was in the ballpark of $150,000, but that was a little over a year ago. So we would need to add that to the bid specifications to price it out, knowing that we would need that for insurance purposes for reimbursement, not necessarily to do that as an option.
I guess my question really wasn't answered. I guess you can't answer it right now. It sounds like it. But anyway, also the shrubbery. Looking at it long term, shrubbery is hard to maintain. Looking at it long term. And also, I was looking at the layout, which will compromise what's going on Sheridan Road with the rest of the facilities going south, meaning Park District, meaning also the residents of individuals, homeowners. Their fence lines pretty much look the same as what you've got up there on that wall when you come to looking at comparison. But for the most part, for me, I'm looking at the shrubbery. When you put shrubbery up there, I mean, it's hard to be maintained, and over the long run, it just ain't gonna work.
So I have two questions. Do we have any information as to why there wasn't maintenance done on the wall previously, historically?
So that is a great question. I don't have any specific answer to that because this wall has been there a long time. To my knowledge, it has never been maintained. During my time here and prior to me, it's never been maintained. It is, with the exception of the vehicle damage, it has looked in the condition it has for a long time. And if we don't have the picture here, but if you look to the south end of the wall on the other side of the current driveway on the interior, you can see the patches from previous repairs, but I don't know specifically when those occurred, if they were 20 years ago, 30 years ago, but there have been other repairs in the past, but the general condition and the maintenance has not happened for some time.
One of the options in the breakout is to just remove and dispose of the damaged pieces, and then replace that to match the existing structure, and that has a range of $25,000. So why is that not one of the proposed choices?
Because they want to put the new fence up there.
But I want to know specifically why we wouldn't expand on that. So that's in one of the attachments. I don't know if we want to pull that up, but it's the Archon wall options, option 1.
Yes, I can speak to that. So that is an estimate, but at the time we brought this forward last year, our designer or our consultant said that they would essentially need to remove the wall anyway and rebuild it. So there's a cost, and I believe it's option 2, if you're looking at that attachment, for that rebuild, which is maintenance and restoration of the remainder of the wall. Because, and again, I apologize, the images are small, but if you go look at the wall where there have been damages over time, the wall is offset. It's offset, it's not a straight line. So in order for them to fill those holes, they would essentially expand the hole and rebuild it almost to the point where they'd be rebuilding the whole wall. And then they would have the labor to take down the iron, reaffix it. Once that's done, some of the cracked capstones would need to be repoured and reset. So option 1 is an estimate for that, but realistically, we can't patch the hole without addressing the other areas, which is where that additional $125,000 comes in. So I believe that's where initially when they said $150,000 to really do it, to restore the wall and make it to where the repairs would be warranted and would last, that's why that's listed like that. We wanted to give the full array just to make sure it was clear, but we are not recommending that at this time because we would essentially be rebuilding the whole wall.
Okay, so if I'm understanding correctly, option one is not really an option, so it's a bit confusing why that's there as a standalone. It's really option 1 and 2 together for $150K or $150,000. And based on what we know, insurance is going to cover roughly $150,000.
Yes, they will cover the repairs, which is why we have to quote it out, and also the designer's cost.
So then option 1 and 2 would account for the repairs and the designer's cost. So if there is an additional cost that's not covered by insurance, it may not be close to the $25,000 or the $50,000 for the other options.
Yeah, it would be option 1 and 2 plus the 8% on top of that architect design cost.
Okay.
So, yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Vukovich? I saw his hand and I see you, Mr. Riddle.
Yes. I guess personally at this point in time, I really don't have an opinion either way because y'all have been talking about this for a year. December will be the second anniversary of both of those accidents that caused this. You all drive in and out of this building every day and have witnessed that. And this is what you have. And I keep hearing about transparency, yet at 5:15 this evening, that report was not on the public agenda.
Correct.
You've got your other two things, the HR reports. Both of those were downloaded today. Now, I don't know when the board got it, if they got it sooner, but the public sure didn't see any of this. So, you always talk about transparency, and you've had all this time to do that. There's no reason for that. No reason at all. You want the public to embrace something, but then you hold it back, and then next thing we know, we got to vote on this right away because we're in a time crunch. Right. You've had plenty of time. My only concern about the shrubbery option is you plant them at 2 feet today, in a short period of time they become 6 feet, and it becomes an attractive nuisance, and nobody's going to want to walk down Sheridan Road for fear that somebody's hiding in those bushes. Mm-hmm. So just keep that in mind as you make your decision. Thank you.
Mr. Riddle?
Yeah, just a couple questions. Taking the wall down, tearing it down, in October, have we looked at the possibility of having someone, a company from Chicago, come in and repurpose those bricks? I know in one of our buildings downtown burned, off Genesee Street there, they had somebody come in and actually tear down the building. They didn't just knock down the building, but they actually took it apart, the bricks, and saved them and repurposed them. I don't know, that might save us some money. That's just an option. But I certainly think I like the idea of taking it down this winter. I've looked at that wall extensively, and it, like you said, it is very crooked. It is, in places, it's off its foundation. To repair those few little holes would become major. I mean, there's no point in repairing them when you've got a wall that's in such bad shape. And then the ironwork on top is in terrible shape as well. So removing the wall seems to be the best course right now. And then getting the variance for putting up what you show is very in line with what others on Sheridan Road, including the Park District, are doing, all the way down through even the Navy base. In that area, it looks we'd be in keeping with what they've been doing. It looks like a very good option to me. And I know at one point you talked about possibly reusing some of those bricks to build the pillars, but is that really an option?
So
They'd be different colors as well then.
yeah, it's a potential option. So the salvaging of the bricks is really, there's a couple things. It's if the bricks can even be salvaged. A lot of the ones that we removed were broken.
Right.
But also the size of the bricks compared to what we would get in replacement, we want to
Right.
make sure they match up.
Right.
If we were going to incorporate them into a pattern theme within the columns.
Right.
But that is something that we've discussed and explored as well.
And there are different colored bricks inside as well. So the wall is not just one brick thick, it's about 4 bricks thick. And yeah, so that's something you'd have to look at. But I certainly favor just removing it as you suggested in option 1. and then rebuilding it once we get a variance to approve that. And then, like I said, I think it'd look very nice, and it would go across all of our front instead of just part of it, all of the land we own. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a question. You all are getting ready to move out of this building, so why are we even thinking about expending money to even redo the wall? You all are getting ready to go to 215 Washington Street, so I'm not getting it.
So, Ms. Hannah, my response to that would be that this is still going to be a district facility. We're still going to have staff here and functions in this building. We're not leaving completely, so we still want the appearance to be nice here when people come to work or to visit.
Oh, I thought everybody from Lincoln Center was going to 214 Washington Street.
No, not every department, Ms. Hannah.
Oh, well, hopefully we'll get those plans soon.
Can you remind the board what those plans are?
You don't have to, I'm not interested right now.
Okay.
We
We'll-
can
Remind the
move
board
on.
what the plans are?
Yes, Mr. Ewing. So we are going to have some central office functions remain at this location, specifically our special education department, a majority of our business financial services, our IT department. I believe those are the larger departments that will be staying. I don't have my notes in front of me, but either representation or all of the other departments in the building, with the exception of like the studio here, et cetera, would be relocating to the downtown location along with the wraparound center function. So diverse learners, IT, business and financial services are the larger three departments that would be remaining here at this time.
And are we still gonna be, I hope we're gonna still have our business meetings here at Lincoln Center.
Can you resend the plans to refresh the entire board on what is the proposed usage of 214 Washington?
We will send those out.
Thank you. Mr. Edwards?
Okay, I have a couple of questions. Now, you gave a $250,000 estimate of what it would cost for you guys to put that fence up. How did you come up with that number?
So that number came from the estimate from our architect.
Okay, so if the insurance is paying for that, then the district wouldn't be coming out of pocket, correct?
So that would depend on the bids we received. I do want to be clear, insurance will pay for the value of the damages and restoration. Okay, so we are trying to keep cost neutral, the design, a larger offset, but mainly cost neutral for a new wall that is constructed. Insurance is not paying for a new wall, but they have stated to us verbally and in writing that they would reimburse the district for the value of the cost for repairs and restoration, which is why we need to request it as part of the bid process.
Okay, and so I'm glad we're talking about this because, again, we talk about transparency, and this is what I talk about when we tell the public so many different things, right? I thought that this building would not only maintain some of those functions up in here, but at once upon a time, you guys were talking about stopping outsourcing our kids and bringing them back, and a lot of the kids is going to be put over here. But, again, we're going to beautify the outside of this building, and the inside looks like what? The bathrooms is not usable. I mean, again, y'all, we spent $4 million was put into 214 Washington, and we own this building already. We purchased that building and then put that much money into it when we could have took that money and did it right here. And once again, like I look at the schools. I look at the schools compared to what 214 Washington finna look like. So is we gonna, again, as Mr. Vukovic said, we've been talking about this for about the wall for too long, and ain't nothing's been done, and ain't nothing for to be done for the rest of the year, ain't nothing for to be done at the beginning of the year. And then the construction would start in March, correct? And so how long do you think at that point is it going to take for them to actually build the wall and be finished with the construction?
2 months.
Yeah, man.
Ms. Lindsay, then I see you, Mr. Sabeki.
So to be clear, if we replace it with another brick wall, are we going to have a maintenance plan so that it doesn't get into disrepair like it has over the years? Because I have to say that I'm a bit frustrated that it's an afterthought, that it wasn't taken care of previously, it wasn't taken care of right before these accidents. And I just want to make sure that if we're going to put an investment, whether it's fully covered by insurance or partially, that we're going to maintain our property appropriately.
Yes, ma'am. So that would be the plan if we were to go with the recommended option. I would like to remind everybody that the capital needs of the building have been something that has been a high need for a long time. So we have tuck pointed several buildings. We've replaced walls at several buildings extensively for the same reason. Regular ongoing maintenance needs to be done. And that is something that the district is trying to improve on. So similar to how we've addressed the exterior walls of our building, we would be looking at the same here. We don't want it to be in the same condition in 10 or 15 years because of wear and tear and lack of maintenance. So that is something we'd be looking at. Also consider the option of if it were to get hit again by a vehicle. We're not hoping for that, but if it does happen and there's damage, that option with the ornamental fence would be a lower cost option than what we have now. Obviously, the lowest cost option would be the alternate option, but we are thinking about those things. So as far as maintenance planning, budgeting, we'd be considering that to make sure that it stays in a good condition.
Okay. I think I am going to echo Mr. Vukovic's concern of the shrubbery. Not only is it a maintenance issue that has been brought up by fellow board members, but it does pose as a potential safety issue of someone, you'd have to jump over or climb over a wall, right? Popping out of bushes is a bit of a concern. So, thank you.
Mr. Sabeki.
All right, I got a couple things. So let's go back in history a couple years. When you guys purchased 214 Washington Street, then you decided to put an administration building in there. Then we didn't know where we can get the money. Then we threw the wraparound center in there so we can get grants and so we can get the administration building, ultimately. And one of the plans were turning this back into a school building, if y'all don't remember. So I would like to know what's the updated plan to turn this back into a school building? Or is now that another 15, 20 years down the line? Because we had to hurry up and rush to get out of this building so we can change this back into a school and all of our outsourced kids can come back into this school. So now that 214 Washington Street's about to be done, what's the plan? What's the timeline with this building to turn it back into a school? And if we are going to turn it back into a school, let's think about that. That wall's been hit 3 times. Look at every one of those trees in front out of there. Been hit numerous times. So if we're going to turn this back into a school building and just put up an ornamental fence in that, what's to protect our kids? Remember, our kids are the #1 priority in safety of the kids. So if we're going to turn this back into a school building, all that needs to be looked at. Because what if kids are out there, if it's back in the school building, that's going to be obviously a field or whatnot, kids are going to be out there playing or whatnot. Then what happens if a car comes through and hits a kid? An ornamental fence there can go right through that. At least a brick wall takes the majority of the impact. So that's other things we need to think about. But I'm interested in the timeline of this building. Because we are in such a rush to get out of this building for that administration building. And all your guys' slides, and I still have them all, was to be determined on this building and the source of funds in that. So I would like to know the timeline on that building, because it was such an emergency to get out of this building and build 214 Washington Street.
I'm glad you mentioned about the district doing work in the building, and respectfully, I appreciate that up to date. But as a community member and somebody that have frequently went to the basketball games over there at the high school, at the Washington campus, how many of you guys would actually go up in there and sit on those toilets?
Which ones?
We really have to ask that question. The smell,
Oh, yeah.
the look, the rust, some of the sinks not working. So when you tell somebody like myself that you guys are working on fixing the building, I'm asking where and exactly what are we fixing. I don't want to talk about a wall or a door when our kids have to sit on that type of toilet, when they have to smell that, and can't nobody make me believe that it's not lead in that building. Some of the walls are even peeling. And so it's disheartening again to see our schools like that, and we just got all of this money to put in an administrative building. Y'all, it's almost like we're going backwards.
So what we can do, Mr. Edwards, because I think we have updated, is at a future meeting, you can go through all of the projects that just happened this summer alone. We know that our buildings are 100 years old, this building inside included. So I 100% appreciate you brought it up, Mrs. Sabecki. The plan has not changed. That's why even when Ms. Hannah mentioned the part of what departments were staying, that has been part of the entire conversation, right? And so the cost, how much it's going to cost, when are we going to put them back, all of those different things, those are like they are still to be determined. In order to redo this building, we had to do 214 Washington. So the goal has not changed, Superintendent, right? Has the plan changed? Has there been an update to what the purpose of Lincoln Center will be?
No.
So the plan is still to bring back and return
The
our
best
students.
program.
The
To
best
bring the
program.
best program here. Also,
That's what I want to know the timeline.
so also,
20 years?
Agreed.
there
So we
is-
can come back with a presentation on the timeline for the best program.
So
Tonight was about
also-
the fence. I just want
Yeah.
to finish.
There's also a capital improvement plan that was created now, is it 4 years? I want to say it's about 4 years now. I lost a year with COVID. 4 years, where it explicitly details what needs to be improved. And from my understanding, it is the first time we've had a capital improvement plan in Waukegan. So there has been much work that has transpired in our schools. I see a mom from Jack Benny here, new windows at Jack Benny, paving at Benny, painting throughout all of our facilities, new furniture. Are we anywhere where we need to be? Absolutely not. But have we made great strides since 2016? Yes, we have. And you can drive around our district and see our facilities on that. Whether some of it's internal, which it's HVAC, removal of
Electrical,
asbestos,
plumbing.
electrics, roofing. I mean, there's a lot that capital improvements that have been done. And that document that is on our district website is there, and you can see when projects are supposed to come online. There's also a capital improvement committee that has those discussions on what projects should be done, which fiscal year, which some may stay back and not go on that year, just depending on need. Because if we have a furnace breakdown, hypothetically, at the high school, we know that we need to move something off the list in order to ensure that we get that furnace up and running. So just for when we talk about transparency, that capital improvement plan is there, Mr. Edwards, if you'd like to review it.
Oh, sorry, can I do one more piece?
Sure. Go
I
ahead, Mr.
apologize. So I think Mr. Sabecki touched on a point that I just wanted to explore a little bit further if we can, and that's the safety of the students when we turn it into a school. Right? We're just going to say that that's what's happening and not get into a debate about that piece right now. But my question is from my understanding, there's been an increase of people speeding around in Waukegan to the point where I believe the intent of the police department with one of their cameras was to kind of track some of the speeding on Grand Avenue. I could be wrong, but I think that's what that intent was. So are we going to have school zone signs and reduce speed limits around not only Lincoln Center, but are we able to get that around all of our schools? Because it wouldn't be just the safety of this location, but making sure that our children are safe in and around the school, whether they're outside playing in the yard, doing a safety drill where they're on a sidewalk close to the roads. What does that look like? Are we going to be able to get zoning to, if children are present, it's reduced speeds? Are we able to get your speed is this, drop it down to this with the flashing lights? I don't know what those are called, apologies. But what would that look like?
Mr. Moulton, when you address Ms. Lenzing's question in regards to, I'm going to call them safety monitors for speed.
Yeah.
I also don't know the correct terminology. But district-wide, can you also touch on the meeting that we had with Alderman Turner regarding his conversations with the city on those type of safety signs here on Sheridan Road? So just so you touch on that also.
Yes, so thank you for the question. So the district does have the flashing signs. We have purchased those flashing signs that we put out throughout the district. That is somewhat of a standard at the locations that need it, particularly at the crosswalks. I know that the Waukegan Police Department put one here on the south end of our property. There have been discussions at looking at making that possibly more permanent, but there is a process for that. We've also added or enhanced crosswalks at some of our high pedestrian traffic school locations. For example, John Lewis Middle School, another one was Whittier Middle School, both of those cross Lewis Avenue. So we did work with Public Works on that, and we just regularly survey the buildings either through the safety department or through the Waukegan Traffic Enforcement, whether it's pedestrian traffic, parking to ensure that individuals aren't parking in no park zones. And we know the start of the school year, some stuff like that happens, people are adjusting. But the goal is for that not to happen as a regular throughout the year. And again, these are all things that are constantly under review. We've also discussed the option of potentially adding some traffic lights in some areas. Some, yes, some have not happened over the years, but all of those discussions happen for buses, individuals dropping off their kids, as well as the pedestrians that we have walking to our schools. Exterior video surveillance, I know that's something that's been discussed, and we've tried to transition to have that option available at all schools, is something that we look at as well. So all of those options would be considered here. The one option that we did discuss, the superintendent and I with Mr. Turner, which is something that is partly city or partly school district, is trees that may be blocking street lights. So, or trees that may be hazardous if they're dying, decaying, over top of power lines in areas where individuals walk, or if they need to see it for the vehicle traffic if it's blocking something, particularly at night. Because we have a lot of evening activities, we also have building rentals. So all of those things are discussed, and we remediate what we can, and we expand that partnership, like I said, mainly between the Waukegan Police Department, Public Works, Operations Department, and the Safety Department. So all of those things will be considered as we look to transition this building.
Okay. So we have kind of gone on a little bit of a detour away from the wall, so apologies for that. I have more questions on that, but I'll send you an email so I can better understand. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Sabecki and then Ms. Hannah, final question.
All right, I got one more thing since the superintendent mentioned Jack Benny. New windows and everything else. So my question is, last board meeting, those pictures I sent around, how did that pass inspection? If students are the #1 priority, why? It was the district that was dismantling that school. The wires and that, how did that pass inspection with the wires and that? If the students are the #1 and most important thing, then why was those crews that was doing that work pulled off of that work to go to 214 Washington Street? Because that's exactly where they were sent. And that school would still look like this if I didn't raise concerns and problems with it, because I do know my codes. I do know the OSHA violations and that, and that's why I brought it up. Because it does go with mental health with students. We talk about mental health and how kids are going through thing. That's one of the biggest things. The kids need to feel comfortable where they're at to learn. When our school classrooms look like they do, with walls peeling, air conditioners leaking, wires hanging out of the walls, what are they to be proud of? Our jails look better conditioned than that basement that Jack Benny looks. And I know, because I worked at the jails too. So that says a lot. So if they're the #1 concern, let's make them the priority. Administrators come after the students. That work should have been done first. If it delayed 214 Washington Street, then it delayed it. But that's what we need to look at first, is the condition of our buildings. Especially when it comes to violations.
Deputy Moden.
Yes, Mr. Ewing. Mr. Sabecki did bring forward that concern. We did address it. We would need to explore the comment about staff being pulled off to go to 214, which we certainly will. But again, that was a concern he brought forward at the, I believe it was the open house night, and we did address it there, and that should have been addressed. We will own that, but there were no live wires, but it did need to be removed. So we promptly addressed it. And we are looking at those conditions at other locations to ensure that that is not present other places.
But that's the thing, if there's wires, they're always considered live, no matter what. If they're sticking out the walls and they're open, they're always considered live, no matter if they're not. If they could have been hooked up on one end, someone didn't know, flip the switch, and then they're live. You don't know. If they're sticking out, according to OSHA, that they have to be removed. If they're disconnected, they cannot be sticking out, and according to code.
Yes, thank you for that, Mr. Sabecki. And I do want to say that when we've done some interior remodeling at our buildings, we've also taken the opportunity to update our fiber for IT. So the cable trays, and Dr. Cuevas is here and he's supported this effort. The cable trays at that particular location, fiber optics for internet connectivity improvements. And again, a lot of the cable trays were left, and there were a handful of wires that were cut but not completely removed. But again, we thank you for bringing that forward, because yes, visually it does impact the students' learning experience.
Ms. Hannah, final question, and then I need consensus from the board.
The going back to the wall, and you all are gonna put this ornamental fence up there. Have you all discussed or thought about putting a metal barricade along the parkway out there to stop any damage that could be done by vehicles to the wall?
So we did discuss that when it came up this time last year, and if you look at the ordinance, and I know that Mr. Vukovic knows these ordinance well, we did double check. The ornamental fencing is something that we can proceed with if it's 4 feet or below. For something outside of ornamental fencing, we would need to refer to the city for that, but we did look at what would be visually appealing compared to what we have now, and to put a metal barricade or some type of bollards or something like that, whether it's concrete or metal. We discussed that, and we tried to keep the visualization similar to what's consistent with some of the other properties on Sheridan Road.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the metal barricade that would go along Sheridan Road on the parkway. It wouldn't be our property. It would be
That grass.
it would be the grass on the west side of the sidewalk, and I'm pretty sure that takes information. I mean, takes cooperation with the city, and I'm gonna say Sheridan that's a state road. No, what is Sheridan?
Are you talking like
So
those
say
metal
Okay, it's a
bumpers?
yes.
Got it.
And we believe
Yes.
that is zoned as residential area. But to answer your question, Ms. Ms. Hannah, we did not, we explored that as an option on our property in front of where the wall currently exists.
No, I'm not
We did
talking
not
about
explore it between the sidewalk and Sheridan Road, to have something installed there right in between that small part. We did not explore that, and we did not ask the city to explore that. We just explored it, how it would look visually and aesthetically, and what the functionality would be if we had a metal barricade and a new wall on our property.
Yeah, no,
I
I'm not
do-
talking about our property.
I do know, Ms. Hannah, in meeting with Alderman Turner, that he is looking to add some speed bumps there, multiple of them, and he's having those conversations, I believe, with the city. I'm not an expert on this. I think that's a city conversation, but when we circle back with Mr. Turner, I can bring that up.
and you know what I'm speaking of, right?
I really
That-
don't,
that
but I'll get
silk-
with you,
that-
so.
That metal barricade.
I think those low
Guardrail, yeah.
Guardrail, that's what it is.
That's what it is. a
Some
guard
people,
rail.
you know, when you're getting off the expressway, sometimes they got guardrails, sometimes they got sandbags. Like, it's just that piece where it'll, you know, if they hit that, hopefully it'll slow them down.
Yeah.
What I will say is, I want to give the opportunity for the board just to give consensus. They're looking for, you know, so basically the two options when I call your name is just to kind of say, are you supportive of replacing the wall with, you know, removal and replacement, the ornamental fencing, or would you be, it looks like there wasn't adequate support for the shrubbery, so eliminate that as an option. So the other option, kind of Ms. Hannah's, and I don't want to say, but it's why until we present a plan to the public and the board as to the cost out and everything, do we want to take the time now to do the fence? Because the plan or the design may change. So I think the two options from the board is, do you support a new fence, or do you support just the elimination of the fence? So I'll start down. I think I already heard you, Mr. Riddle, but if you can just state it for the record.
I'd go along with the recommended action, tearing down the wall, and in the spring replacing it with the recommended ornamental fence.
Mr. McBride,
The ornamental fence with the brick pillars.
Ms. Hannah,
Whatever.
Ms. Lindsay.
I just want to make sure I understand. It's either this recommended option with the pillars or nothing.
Or we just remove the wall, yes, ma'am.
The fence.
Nothing. But we do have a majority of the board members who are present, so that is the direction to the community and the board. It still has to obviously be voted on, so it'll be brought back for bid, have an opportunity to either approve or reject the
Can I ask a question, Brandon? What does nothing mean?
just I want the fence removed, so it, you know, I don't want to get into too much of it, but it's 6:53. When you asked Mr. Vukovic and Mr. Sabecki, why haven't we addressed the wall? It was because of some of the things that you brought up, Ray. There's so many other priorities, but I 100% agree that it is an eyesore, and so it has to come down. We can't do nothing, right? So that's why. So if a majority of the board wants to replace the fence, it's done.
No, I
That's why.
just didn't understand what
Yeah.
nothing means.
Nothing, just removing it, leave it, and then figure out what you want to do with this whole property. And when I say figure it out, we still do need a plan to cost all of that, right? But we want it to be the best program. We know that certain departments are already staying in the plan, so that was why my voice is what it is. So.
One thing to go into this, June, is obviously if you're gonna do it, tear it down, is wait, because obviously if you do something to this building, you have to get construction vehicles in here, especially the big semis. Might take out more of that wall if they have to turn in here. So that's something to think about. If you are gonna change this, it's tear it down and leave it to nothing, and then decide what you're gonna do with the building,
So
and then put up the
I
fence.
think either way, going out for bid is an appropriate next step, and that's the concurrence that we've given the board. So to give a price and the actual construction timeline, if we still decide not to do it or move forward with it again, but we need to give them direction. And so Deputy Moten now has the direction that he needs in order to start the process. It's because in the proposed plan, the wall would be taken down in October, right? And so that would at least eliminate it from being an eyesore, and I think that will allow us to continue down the road. So we now have information items. The information items have been presented. I'm going to go through each of the letter items, and if anybody has kind of, you know, a question or things that they want brought out. Was Sodexo present this evening? Because they are here, Deputy Moten, I want to respect them and allow them to go through, you know, through the presentation, and then if the board or community had any questions.
Yes, thank you, Board President. So I'll ask them to come up. The main thing is really just to introduce the new team. Sodexo is new to our district. Some of the individuals are new to our district, some are not. So it's really just to introduce the team. And if there are any questions, please feel free to ask.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Good to see you guys again. We just wanted to introduce the team. We've put a few things in the board packet if you have any questions. And so without further ado, I am Chris Gargiulo. I am the district manager that oversees Waukegan account.
Natalie Richter, interim GM. I used to work here before with Ellier.
I'm Chris Lebetsky. Nice to meet you. My third day here, executive chef.
Alicia Taylor, operations manager. I'm sorry, and we do have some members that are not with us this evening. We have 2 FSMs, food service managers. Their names are Maria Zavala and Alita Garza, and we have an in-house on-site HR person, which is Joanna Zavala as well.
Well, we thank you all for coming before the board and for your introductions. There was meal count information that was listed. Obviously, we know you guys are getting in the swing of things, so we look forward to a more formal presentation at a later time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I'll go through, and again, if anybody has a question on the item, just notify and let me know. So item 5B, approval of facility rental request for Ghostlight movie production.
I have questions on that.
Okay, I saw Ms. Hannah's hand first, and then Ms. Lindsay.
And Ms. Lindsay, briefly, we do have individuals, because this is kind of a unique request for our district, we do have individuals here for specific questions from the production company.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Ms. Hannah, with your question.
that's what I wanted to know. Who are these people?
You guys want to come up? Oh, yes, and if you could speak in the microphone, Ms. Hannah.
She was asking, who are these people?
So since they are here this evening, they were able to come up. As part of this, we'll ask them to introduce themselves as well and give you a brief intro.
Hi there, I'm Alex Thompson. I'm the co-director of the film Ghostlight.
Hi, I'm Kelly O'Sullivan, and I wrote the film, and I'm a co-director.
Hi, my name is Luke Dyra, and I'm the cinematographer for this project.
And so this project is a feature film. It's about a construction worker who has a loss in his family. His son commits suicide, and he's unable to deal with the grief. And so one day on the job, he sees a sort of an open door with a lot of strange people going in and out of it, and it's a community theater production. So he wanders in and ends up becoming a part of the community theater, doing a show of Romeo and Juliet. And by the end of the film,
Don't tell the story.
Well, suffice it to say, it has a very it has a happy ending. So, yeah.
And so, okay, I've never heard of Ghostlight.
Right, that's the title of the film.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
so what's the company?
So we're all individuals. We're independent contractors. So every time a film is made, typically on the independent space, you make a new. Your company is the film. So it's like everybody gets hired by the film. So for myself, I have a company called Runaway Train, but it's really just myself. It's a small LLC. And so Luke and Kelly are also just individuals.
Okay, and so just kind of out of curiosity, why Waukegan?
So about 4 years ago, we made a film called St. Francis, and we had a chance encounter with the mayor at that time, and he was extraordinarily generous, and came to set, was very, very kind, and sort of said, listen, if you ever want to make another movie, come up, check out Waukegan. And we're on the north side of Chicago in Rogers Park, so it's actually not a bad drive. And so we started talking to David Motley, who recommended we check out Lion Magnet School. And we spoke with LeBaron and Nick, and they were so very kind, and we got sort of a run of the school and got a look inside and on the outside, and we thought it had a lot of beautiful character and was sort of an opportunity to come up out of the city where it's a lot more congested, and most of the schools don't have the kind of, they're not 100 years old. They don't have the character and the beauty that schools do up here, truly. And we were also filming at Three Brothers Theater on Genesee, and so there's also a convenience factor as well.
And so, okay, you're LLC,
Yeah, yeah. yes,
and
ma'am.
so it's for profit,
Yes, that's right. Hopefully.
okay? Are you're asking for a waiver as well? Of the
Yes,
fees?
ma'am. There's also an educational component to all the productions that we've done together. So we'll have many of the crew members are actually DePaul faculty. And so we've had the great fortune of creating mentorship programs on every production we've done. So on this production, we have 6 young people, both undergraduates, graduates, and high schoolers from the Chicagoland area. Will be oh.
Go ahead.
Oh, who are coming out as their schedules allow, and they'll each be assigned a mentor on the production. So folks who are interested in camera might work with Luke or the first AC. Folks who are interested in becoming screenwriters might work with Kelly. And yeah, it's been a positive experience. But yeah, but the fee waiver is really just because we're a very, very, very small film. And you know, we really want to bring as much as we can up here, but it's not nearly enough. It's not what you're worth. But you know, we just can't offer the line item. So.
Okay.
Question?
Anybody else?
Yeah,
Yes, I got a couple
I want
questions,
to
too.
continue because I need to know.
I mean, I guess,
Y'all gonna talk about the kids, or if not, I will.
I guess
Well, I
just
got a
ask your
question.
question directly so we can
Yes, ma'am.
move through the agenda.
All right.
Well,
Are you done, Ms. Hannah?
Well, I was next.
Okay, you're next. Okay.
I am, when I said, I didn't hear anything in reference to our students.
Oh no, ma'am. There are of course opportunities, but I didn't want to presume that there would be any engagement with the students at the school before we had approval of any kind.
No, I'm talking about the same thing that you're offering other high schoolers from out of Chicago.
Oh yeah, I would love that.
I'm looking for you
I would
to
love
offer
that.
those opportunities for our high schoolers that are in photography, that are in
I see.
drama, that are in that are interested in production, that are interested in filmmaking.
I love that.
Okay, and so that's what I'm talking about. Okay, and if our kids are not involved in this,
Oh yeah, no,
Okay,
ma'am.
then-
I would love that. I would absolutely love that. I would just never presume, but that if that's an opportunity, I would love to explore that, and guarantee spots on the crew for Waukegan students. Like we could guarantee that today. It's the easiest thing in the world. Yeah.
Ms. Lindsay?
So just to give you some background behind why Ms. Hannah's asking this question is because we're very much our kids.
Totally.
We value all children. We think all children should have experiences, but we know that in our community, they're not afforded as many experiences as others.
Yeah.
So when we had a women's football team come, our prerogative was to ask, well, what does our children get out of this when we're involving the school district? So it's good to hear that. I think before I personally would say yes to this, I would want to know what that would look like.
Yeah.
Because $14,500 seems like not a lot, but
Right.
even for us it is. So I'm a bit confused because when I went to Google Ghostlight LLC, I got a company out of Detroit, Michigan.
Yeah. No, we're registered with Illinois. We're an Illinois corp.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if I don't know if our names were on the thing, but you Kelly and I both have long track records and really easily Googleable, and yeah, I feel very grateful. But our film St. Francis, which we shot up here, went on to show at festivals around the world, and just a few months ago, just six or 7 months ago, opened in Japan and theaters.
Mm-hmm.
Also, very small movie, but think it had a lot of heart, and it had a lot of support from the communities that we filmed in, and really that's what makes it. That's what makes a project succeed. I really do believe that. So I'd be happy to present a plan that would, guarantee spots on the crew, mentorship opportunities. I love that, truly.
Okay. I have two additional questions. So in the proposal, it sounded like you were looking for extras, or there's a big availability for extras. Are they going to be paid?
We have a small budget for extras. It depends on how many we can get, truly. We sort of have like a cap, but I could talk to our line producer and figure out exactly what that number is. But we wouldn't ask anyone, essentially nobody we wouldn't want to ask anyone to do anything they weren't prepared to do, obviously. So we're providing food for everyone in like a sort of 1 to 3 hour period, and we sort of get everybody onto a listserv so they could be involved in premieres or screenings or anything like that, so they could follow up and be a part of the process more so. Just knowing that whatever that stipend or per diem is like is not like a SAG extra rate.
Okay. You've just added some pieces that now I apologize, Mr. Riddle. I have a couple of bonus questions.
Of course.
So when you say premieres, we have Genesee Theater. So is the intent to have a showing for community members and possibly have students in the district have free access as long as they show an ID?
Oh yeah, I love that idea. I think that's an amazing idea.
Perfect. And then I guess my final question for the moment is, right now, SAG is going on a strike.
Yeah.
So I would like to know how this isn't going against that piece.
So we applied a month and a half ago for the interim agreement, and we've been approved last Friday. So we're approved as of Friday, and we just got the DocuSign while we were sitting here. So
Okay.
we're
And
all-
that'll
we're
be
all good.
shared with us?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And it's under the SAG ULB, ultra low budget agreement.
Ultra low budget?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Mr. Riddle and then Ms. McBride.
Okay, just a couple of quick questions. We do rent our facilities out to other agencies. Mostly they are working with our students. If they're working with our community, they end up paying, 50 to 75% of our fees. So
Yeah.
we don't normally waive everything unless there's something, as the others on the board have said, there's some work taking place that our students are benefiting from it. What's your ability to pay some of this? I see it looks like you're maybe asking for an entire waiver. That
Well,
might
yeah.
mean our district would have to put out $2,500 just for custodial fees. We have to pay our custodians to be there. The buildings have to be open on the weekends.
Sure.
There may be cleanup fees. So I think you'd need to come back to us with something that you can pay.
Yeah.
Because there's certainly some expenses to us besides, having staff there. We need lights and heating, whatever.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so.
So, it's funny, the reason why we haven't why we didn't come to Nick and LeBaron with a plan to involve the community more is because we're used to sort of saying, listen, we'll be small, we'll be out of your hair, we'll come in on the weekends, you won't know we're there. But the idea of coming into a community and engaging with them in the same way that we have with the Three Brothers Theater, where they're bringing in props and set dressing and costumes, and the Josh Beadle there, who's I know a friend of Dave Motley's, is really engaged with us in like a producerial capacity. We would love to bring those opportunities to the kids. I think the initial thought was, let's not bother them, let's not be a nuisance. But I think it sounds like what I'm hearing is that would actually be really welcome, and that this could be a really exciting opportunity. In terms of fees, I keep saying we're very small. We are very small. However, I totally understand the need to keep the lights on, to have janitorial staff, especially on the weekends. It's a catch-22 where we don't want to be there in the weekdays and disrupt things. So weekends are best. But we can definitely come back. I think what the conversation I had with somebody was, oh no, we don't need a fee waiver. We have $100 a day. And they said, oh, I think you need to apply for a fee waiver. So we can come back with some increase from that. That obviously an increase from that $100 a day. that's what our sort of standard has been for all of our locations so far, but we've certainly made exceptions for places that are really special, and this would be one of those exceptions, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the
Yeah, I
question.
think you'd need to negotiate with the staff,
Absolutely.
with the promoting staff on that, right.
Happy to negotiate, yeah.
Well, I'm kind of where Mr. Riddle is at. You know, I'm looking at the possibility that you guys should compensate us some kind of way. I don't know how you can do it. You know your business better than I do. But on the other hand, I think some of the questions, basically you're being hit with, how are we benefiting from what you're doing?
Right.
And again, I love the idea that you're going to get our students involved, and I heard you also on one breath guarantee that would happen.
Absolutely, yeah, I would guarantee that today.
And that sound good. That sound real pleasant to my ears.
Good.
Because again, I'm with Mr. Riddles. I would like for you to come back some kind of way. As Christine said, $14,000 don't sound a lot, but it is a lot, considering that we have to take care of our custodians. So when we waive this, it's not like we're just saying, hey, it's waived. We have to offset what we're waiving.
Right.
So I don't know how you're going to do it and who you're going to talk to, but some kind of way, come back and meet us part of the way. You understand what I'm saying?
Of course, yeah.
So, and then too, also to is Waukegan going to be, when you start doing your critics, are we going to be in your critics in any kind of way?
Yeah, yeah.
Credits and all.
Credits.
Oh my gosh, we've already been talking about how we did not think that, you know, X number, half of our shoot might be in the city of Waukegan. And so, you know, we want to put a big, you know, this produced in the city of Waukegan.
Well, that's good because
well, whatever the appropriate.
You're not the.
Yes, I like that.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah,
that.
the movie industry started in Waukegan.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah, I do know that.
With
Yeah.
the kaleidoscope, right.
Yeah.
So what it sounds like, I know they're there and the things are itemized. What I will say with concurrence of the board, so we can give some type of clear direction, is can we cost out the price for what we estimate the janitorial services to be, and if we can engage just in a conversation, and then if we can, you know, also possibly. Not possibly, once the proposal is ready and ready to be voted on by the board, that it also comes along with a way that we can encourage students to apply or direct them for whatever the benefits are. So I think the questions that were raised were great questions, and that's kind of what it is. I love the idea of you guys coming and working in Waukegan. We have a lot of movie credits to our name, and so it's great that we're seen as a location and a good partner. So I'd love to see it happen, and I think that at least helps speak to what you were saying, Mr. Riddle and Mr. McBride and everyone else, and also make sure that our students have access to these opportunities.
Yeah, thank you, and I would just say thank you for giving us so much time, and also just for engaging, because I don't think this is just a solution to the sort of problem of being a little movie. It actually is going to make the process richer for us. We got a very friendly group, and I think everyone's going to be really thrilled at the possibility. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I think we all do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Item 5C is the Glen Flora Elementary sidewalk replacement. Mr. Riddle.
Just a quick question on this. The sidewalk, I looked at it and I had questions about why the sidewalk was going to go through the middle of a playing field, or, you know, and have to remove equipment, whereas it looked like it could go alongside the building or certainly around the other side. Had that been thought of? Are we no longer using that playground, or are we tearing it down? It looked like it was in decent shape.
Yes, Mr. Riddle. So to answer your question, we are looking to remove that playground. So this was requested by the building leadership. Glen Flora has several playgrounds on the north side of the property. They're not utilizing this playground. Currently, the students walk through the mud around that side of the building. So this actual plan was requested by building leadership as part of their SPP.
Okay, that's fine. So you're going to tear it down. All right. No further questions.
Thank you. Item D, Waukegan High School Brookside roof renovation and envelope project.
No questions.
Information, the items, and the cost have been listed there.
Right.
Are there any questions?
No, looks good.
Yeah. Did you ever do a comparison with North Chicago and their roof?
Can you, what's that? I'm sorry, can you clarify, Mr. McBride?
You know, I was telling you North Chicago, I was telling you replacing their driveways, and they also done their whole roofing. And I was telling you about that because we was concerned and a lot of questions asked about when we were doing Brookside, and I was saying just make a comparison in terms of the costs. Did you ever do that?
We did not, Mr. McBride, but we will bring the unit price back. But what I will say right now is, if you see the breakdown of costs in the agenda item, bless you, $5 million of this is for the roof itself. This is approximately near 90% of the roof. We have several other items we want to address, and it is, I know the attachments are a lot of pages, but windows, masonry, plumbing, new insulation is all within that $10 million. So the roofing construction itself is not the full $10 million. It's about half of that. We also have built-in allowance and contingencies and architect fees, which equates to about $1.3 million. But we will do that comparison and note that because we want to make sure that we're not over or underpaying. We also need to review and make sure the specifications are consistent, because we're looking at a 30-year roof, 30-year warranty with this material, heavy duty.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad you did a breakdown, because the last time when you did present it, it was a flat 10,000, but we didn't, well, 10 million, but we did not see all the specs that were involved in the 10 million.
Mm-hmm.
And like I say, I did do some comparison considering what we're doing, what North Chicago is doing as well. And I think we're in the ballpark, because it was some questions raised. So I was alarmed by it, but when I went out and did my research, we kind of in the ballpark of doing the right thing.
Ms. Anna.
Okay. I'm a little bit confused here, because the ask that you all came to us for when we set aside this $10 million, you all told us that this was a $10 million roof. You never said anything about masonry, windows, plumbing, HVAC, access stairs. You never said anything about that, Mr. Moulton. You just said that you were doing a $10 million roof. And at that time, I had a problem with it. And so now you have added more into the 10 million. Is that what you are now saying?
No, Ms. Hannah, and I apologize if it wasn't clear. So the previous approval, when we brought the roofing consultant, we were requested and brought forward a summary of the work, and I don't know if Mr. White has the availability. We included that 2-page summary here because the question was what parts of the roof are going to be replaced. So if you could zoom in, please. This is what we presented in March of 2023 for information. The first page, if you could scroll up, please, Mr. White. The first page has 10 items on it that discusses more than just roof-to-roof replacement.
Mm-hmm.
So this was the reference point. We didn't have the breakdown of costs for each item, as Mr. McBride mentioned, so we're showing that now. But this is consistent with what we presented in February. So roofing, insulation, the windows near the gymnasium, etc.
Mrs. Sabecki.
So, I understand what Ms. Hannah's saying, because when you guys brought this forward the first time, you guys said that roof was in horrible shape, the whole thing, or 70-80% of that roof's going to have to be replaced. Material alone for just the roof was $10 million. And that's why you asked for the $10 million. That's exactly what was presented. It didn't say nothing about, now the roof went from $10 million down to $5 million. And then this other stuff was added. When it was first originally brought and presented, it was a $10 million roof. And I know because when I was running for the board, we even talked about it because Mr. Riddle accidentally said that we got a grant for $10 million to pay for the roof. But it was, he misspoke on that. And it was $10 million just for the cost of the roof.
Yep. maybe I could speak to that because I'm on capital improvement, Mr. Sabecki, and we discussed this extensively in our capital improvement, and it included all these items that we're talking about here on this, and this is dated February 25th, 23. When it was brought to the board, I remember out of these other items too being talked about. So taking the roof off, mandated, doing the HVAC, redoing the HVAC, the masonry, the windows. We talked about the windows. So it was talked about extensively at our capital improvement, and maybe when it was presented to the board, and maybe when I presented it at that meeting, I talked about the roof, but it included, in my mind, all of this other work that was taking place.
But that's not how it was presented here.
This was the attachment, and I get it, so we can be more clear and precise with the information when we bring it forward. I do think, and I see you, Mr. Vukovic, so I'm coming to you next, is that this is part of exactly what it is that we just talked about. I got to keep pointing it back out. Is when we go in, and if we're replacing a roof, to replace the roof without addressing these other things makes no sense.
Right.
Right? It's because then you're going to be there replacing this later, doing these. So we have been, to Ms. Placencia's point, we have a capital improvement plan. And so when we are going in, for example, and replacing a roof, it makes sense for us to also replace old pipes. It makes sense for us to remediate asbestos. It makes sense for us to get rid of all of those different things. So in this one, by doing the roof, yes, it requires and necessitates all of these other things, and the total cost for that was estimated to be $10 million. Mr. Vukovic.
I have no doubt that the roof needs some replacing. The majority of that building, the original building, is coming up on 65 years of age, and it's been through a lot. But there have been a lot of add-ons over the years, and that building is horrible. It's almost like two separate campuses that are connected
Smashed
on the first
together.
floor.
Yes.
You've got 30-some classrooms that were added on the east end, and there's the second floor, and you can't get to the second floor of the original building. And all those kids have to come down, and it's a narrow, it's a safety issue. So, I mean, that's something, if you're gonna be doing a roof, you ought to look and see if there's a way to put like a hallway around where the cafeterias are to get into that other wing.
Right.
The other item is if you do spend,
I think it's on. I think you just got to hold it closer. Right?
if you do spend that money and you now have a brand new roof, you should be looking into a company that would come in and partner with you to put in solar panels.
Yeah, that's
because the majority of that roof is like 80% sun most of the day.
right. Right.
And I know you guys have been slow to launch here on Yeoman Creek, but there are companies out there that would partner with schools to put solar on the roof and probably find ways to fund it.
Thank you for that suggestion, Mr. Vukovic. Ms. Lindsay.
Thank you, Mr. Vukovic. You're thinking along my lines. Just to be fair, right, so I do have the agenda item pulled up from February 28th, 2023, and in the description, it does talk about the roofing, the windows, the ceiling, the floors, asbestos abatement, and HVAC. So just to be fair, it was in February 2023. I think the confusion is just assigning the numbers to all of those pieces. Because when we were having that conversation, to Mr. Ewing's point, it wasn't necessarily clear because we kept saying the roof when really it's the whole component of when you do the roof, it's open, let's address all of these other issues before we slap another roof on it. So I just wanted to be fair, that that's what that conversation entailed. And it is on board docs if people want to go and check it.
Absolutely, and we did identify the agenda item the board took action on in April as the roofing replacement. But again, this is the same attachment from the approval item in April, so it's represented the same. It just did not have an itemized cost. It was a lump sum cost. So we'll make sure that's clear at the time of request for approval.
And I think I mean, if it doesn't delay drastically, and I don't know if you already have, but you can come back with that. But as we look to make our district more green and to offset some of the costs, it may be worth reaching out.
Absolutely, and Brookside Roof was not a candidate at the time we Mr. Vukovic left. At the time, we did the solar panels because of the condition of the roof, so we certainly would be looking into that.
Thank you. All right, so if we could get the agenda back up.
Did you ever find out about that antenna that was put up there?
I would need to refresh myself, Ms. Hannah. I know our antenna for the radio repeater is Brookside campus, but for our walkie-talkies, but I'll refresh myself on that. But we do have the repeater there for the walkie-talkies.
Okay,
But
you are aware of what I'm talking about?
Yes, ma'am, I believe so. I'll circle back with you on that to make sure I'm clear.
So we got item E, which is the AOEC, JRTC classroom renovations and storage improvements.
Would we mind combining E and F together in the conversation since it appears they're related, or do we want to handle them separately?
I mean, I'm good with if you have a question that addresses both.
So we've approved a couple of things with regard to this piece. So can you just clarify how this is different, if it is so, from some of the prior things for the community? Just so we're all on the same page as we start to engage in these conversations.
Yes, ma'am. So this is for ROTC at AOEC. So previously the board was asked to approve furniture for 2 existing classrooms that are currently being utilized. Also recently, asbestos abatement for 2 additional classrooms we hope to utilize in the spring semester. This agenda item is for the furniture for the 2 additional classrooms in the spring semester, as well as remodeling and renovation costs once the abatement is completed in those 2 classrooms, as well as an office space for that program. So we have a total of 4 classrooms, an office space, and also a storage space for uniforms and other equipment at that location.
Mr. Riddle, there, Ms. Hannah.
Yeah, if we're combining that, then we're talking about the furniture. I just wanted to ask the question. We were recently at a seminar, as you know, and I was talking to the representative there from Buy Board, and that's a conglomerate that allows school districts to buy and purchase furniture and other stuff at a reduced cost because you're going in with a lot of people. And I asked them, is Waukegan a part of that? And they said yes. And I said, have we've been buying a lot of furniture recently in many of our schools the last few years. Have we been using Buy Board? And he looked it up electronically and said no. I'm just wondering whether we look at that, or could we check that out? It's called Buy Board, and it's just like when you go in with government and buy stuff, you get a good price because you're buying with across the nation, and we're a member of that group. And he said some schools do not know they are members. They forget somebody else, was part of it. He said you haven't purchased for many, many years through Buy Board.
We will certainly look into that.
Okay.
Buy Board sounds similar to a purchasing cooperative, like
okay.
some of the other individual or the other organizations we're a part of that do a similar.
Okay.
They bid it out. We have a contract number. We're guaranteed the lowest price for a specific item that we specify. So, but we can certainly look into that.
You may be
as
getting
an
a better
option as well.
price, through whom, so you're already a part. But just, check out Buy Board.
Thank you.
We were a part of of that organization that we bought from before. And all that stuff should be on file somewhere.
That was my
Ms.
only
Hannah.
question on that.
Questions on those 2 items? If not, we're at item G, Safety and Security Consulting Services Proposal Extension.
I have questions on this one.
Go ahead, Ms. Lindsay.
So I want to know how has it been going, or how did it go for the 2022-2023 school year? What was left undone, and have we looked at other agencies essentially to tackle the same information?
Sure. I know Mr. Wilson is here this evening. A lot of this partnership and consultant agreement has been done directly through his office. I know that this particular organization As soon as the previous contract was approved, they did crossing guard training. They developed and implemented crossing guard training for our crossing guards. They did building audits specifically at the high school campuses. They've talked with our high school administration as well as our safety administrative leadership team. They've looked at some traffic patterns for us. They've also provided consultative services and support at committee meetings, work group meetings, assisted with the renewal of our agreement with the Waukegan Police Department. So it's been a variety of options, but there's also been some coaching and direct one-on-one contract administratively with Mr. Wilson's office to help assist him. So this, for continuity's sake, we're looking for an extension because there are some items that did not happen in the first year or we want to expand that happened in the first year and take a deeper dive, particularly as we talk about trainings for our senior leadership team to help support in case of an emergency, gang activity awareness, which is a concern we know has existed and we've heard about. We want to tackle that a little more aggressively, continuing building vulnerability assessments and continuing professional development. And again, if Mr. Wilson, if you don't want to speak or I'm speaking incorrectly, please feel free, but we want to maintain some consistent continuity here with what was done last year.
Okay, so where are they sourced out of? Where's this company from? Is it from Illinois? If so, where in Illinois? If it's not, the reason I'm asking is because our Waukegan Police Department knows about local gangs. So why are they not the ones advising? Then we also have a Safe Place, which has a gang division that they're working through. They got a grant for a couple of different programs. One of them is related to gangs. So why aren't we working with local organizations, whether it's the police department or places like a Safe Place, to talk about local gang activity?
That's a great question. Expound on it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I don't want to give the impression that we're not speaking to the Waukegan Police Department. We work with them on a regular basis, specifically as it relates to some procedural things in day-to-day operations or concerns we hear in the community. This is really an in-between to help us in our growth and understand from a training aspect how we want to make sure that our staff, regardless of the position they hold, is informed on current trends. They know the lingo, so to speak, hand signals, and really make them aware and informed. We did hear in some of our work group meetings that there was a concern there. People don't know what they don't know. We want to make sure that we can enhance that from a professional development standpoint because we are talking about a large district with a lot of stakeholders. Waukegan Police Department has been good partners. They have assisted us in some areas, but they also have other roles to fill as opposed to like creating the training manuals and bringing that to us and actually training our staff. And I know the superintendent and Mr. Wilson are here, so go ahead.
So, Ms. Lenzine, I'm gonna more directly answer your question. So yes, this is a local company, and actually an alumni from Waukegan Public Schools. And the company contracts with Chief Wallace, I hope I pronounced his name correctly, who was previously one of the chiefs of Waukegan Police Department. So one of the reasons why we chose to go with this company is so that we could have that direct dialogue and knowledge of the Waukegan community along with the communication lines and operating norms of Waukegan PD. So that was just to more directly answer your question.
So, if there's nothing to add from
Bless you.
Mr. Wilson, Mr. Edwards.
Yeah, man. This right here don't make no sense. This is a waste of money. We work with the Waukegan Police Department. Y'all have all of these community-based organizations that run up under here and talk about all the work that they're doing in this community. This is an opportunity for y'all to go sit and talk to them. You talking about learning the gang activity? You guys don't even have the information when something goes on in the community. This SOR officer, whoever we are doing this business with in the Waukegan Police Department, don't even inform you guys on what's going on. And so we're gonna pay somebody to come up here to teach our security guards something unfortunately, Mr. Wilson has been under Mr. Rogers for some years. He should have learned a whole lot to the point to where he should be able to do the teaching himself. And then we go through all of this training for what?
75,000.
What has it done? It hasn't changed anything in our district. Our safety officers ain't doing nothing. And respectfully to most of them, if they put the phones down, we can get some work done. But come on, y'all, we finna spend this money for what?
To give it to Rick Harris.
I mean, where's all the games at? Because I'm still trying to find them myself, and I'm someone that's out here. So now that it's just a group of boys, we calling it a gang, we have to stop that. For real. Because it ain't no gangs out here. They exist. They still throwing up gang signs. But they ain't causing this ruckus in this community. And this is what I talk about getting out of those four walls that we're always in. This is why I talk about getting more out into the community. Because these are things that all of you guys should already know. These are things that you guys should already be updated on, especially your staff, sir, because most of them live in this community. So they shouldn't need to be trained on the local so-called gangs that's going on, because most of them live in the community with them. They know who they belong to. And this got me hot for a different reason. Because our kids still have nowhere to go when we get outside of these schools and we're steady throwing money away. I'm trying to get a sense of understanding of this. We're not going to get nothing done, y'all, seriously, and I'm going to say this, until this district understand the importance of communication and relationship building. You guys are lagging in those tremendously. Kudos for changing the game. But you release that to the public 48 hours before the game? This is what we talk about when I say accessing barriers in the way of them being able to access some of these resources and things like that. So a lot of them that was waiting on this game, they had been working a week to get a ride. And then boom, you drop this on them. So I'm gonna need the operations department to step it up, and I'm gonna need the security director to do something different. Because this community has been the same. In fact, years ago when I was in school, gangs was worse than they is today. And you talking to a former gang member. So I know what I'm talking about, and I got the stats and the data to prove it.
Mr. Becky.
I have to agree. This amount of money, why aren't we using our local resources? Waukega's part of NIPUS, which is the Northern Illinois Police Alarm System. Some of the best gang specialists that are on that. Lake County has a top-notch gang unit. We are talking about gangs. All it is communication. Reach out to the sheriff. Reach out to us. We can bring people in and get training in that for practically nothing. That's what we're talking about. Reach out. There's a lot of people that know this. There's a lot of specialists. When I was in school, I did the Explorer program. One of the best gang specialists was a cop in Vernon Hills, and then he relocated to Waukegan, and now he's retired out of Waukegan. That's what I'm talking about. Instead of just keep throwing all this money out there, why aren't we talking to the police, to the sheriffs, to the state police? They have the expertise for this stuff, and this is all they do. Even at the jail. They have a gang unit at the jail that specialize in gang signs, gang activity, gang writings. That's all they do. We should be reaching out to these organizations before we're just throwing out money to other people to come in and do the same thing. And they know what they're talking about because they deal with it every single day.
You ready, Director Wilson?
Good afternoon, community, board members, board president, colleagues. I just want to address the part of the gang. We're focusing on the gang awareness. That's really a small part of it. We are partnering with with the community. We're partnering with other agencies. There's some things that have been in the works. Mr. Alajakis has reached out to Mr. Springs and his organization. So there's some other partnerships going on. Chief Walls brings an expertise to the table. We had one module. We created a module because it was an ask of the union teachers for gang awareness. So we created that one module. We're going to create a second module. We'll partner with the SROs, the police department. It's going to be a video to focus on the gangs around here, more informative. The basis of this, what they'll be doing is we'll be doing vulnerability assessments again. The first part of the contract, we did the high schools. Then we did the middle schools. We didn't have a chance to focus on the elementary schools and pre-K. So we wanted to get that done as part of this contract. There's some good things that came out of those. Part of the recommendations was for the secure vestibules. Some of those things came out of the observations that Chief Walls did. So it's just not the gang. The gang is a small part of this. And we will be working with the partners in Waukegan. And like you said, I'm born and raised here. My staff lives here. So we do get information. We're not misinformed. Some people lead us to be. Okay.
Thank you, Director Wilson. Are there any other questions related to item G? All right, item H, crossing guard, new position request. The information has been presented there. Any questions from the board or the community? No. Item I, request for approval of Smith Detection's preventative maintenance for district x-ray machines.
Just a quick question here.
Go ahead, Mr. Riddle.
Mr. Moten, on our 9 machines, security machines, my only question is, the maintenance contract is for 3 years at roughly $40,000 a year, which means about $4,400 per machine. Some of our machines are new and some of them are newer and some of them are a little bit older, I think. And I was looking online to see what machines cost, and I don't know what ours cost, what we paid for ours, but I see some of them are available for around $4,000. Have we looked into the, I mean, I'm not sure. I presume you've looked at that. I guess that's my question, is how old are some of our machines, and for that kind of a maintenance agreement, could we not replace some of them? And then do we need to do this thing over 3 years, or should we just do it? I know there's been, the board has asked if contracts could be maybe for 1 year, unless we're really getting a deal with a 3-year contract.
Okay. Let me understand, you said we can buy.
Two-part question. Basically, one is the age of our machines and how expensive they are to replace. Some of our machines are old, some of them are newer. So my cost factor here, if I did it right, if it's costing us about $40,000 a year for this maintenance agreement to maintain these machines, could we maybe buy or replace some of the older machines for that kind of a cost? Are some of those machines too old to really bother with? And technology changes. I know we bought a few new machines. That's part one question. The second question is, well, maybe that's the question really. How long do these machines last, and how, is this a good deal, and is it a renewal, or is it something new that we're doing, this maintenance agreement?
This is a renewal every year.
Okay.
It's a preventive maintenance agreement.
Preventive maintenance.
Because we run the amount of time that we run our machines every day takes a lot of toll on them.
Mm-hmm.
And so they need preventive maintenance.
Right.
This is an annual thing. It's going to be paid over this 3-year contract, but it's going to be paid annually.
Right.
The last time I priced X-ray machines, I think they were the ones that we currently have. They're around $36,000 to $38,000. And so we're not talking about the metal detectors. I think there's a distinction between the X-ray machines and the metal detectors. You are correct with the price with the metal detectors. They're around $4,000. But the X-ray scanners are extremely costly.
Okay. That explains that too for me. Thank you.
Ms. Lindsay?
So just so I understand, when we're talking about this large of a payment, this is something that we don't have to put out to bid for? It's only like new projects that we do so? Or is this the only maintenance company around? How has their service been over the years if this is a renewal?
Yeah, they've been great supporting us. CHEA, Smith Detection's, CHEA is the parent company, but Smith Detection does all of the companies. They do the courthouse, they do everyone around here, their expertise, and that's why we continue to go with them. They're familiar with our product. They've been doing this for, I believe we first got x-ray machines probably about 15 years ago, 16 years ago.
Okay. So have we looked at alternative options in case there was something more cost effective?
We have not.
Okay.
And
Ms. Anna.
I'm just wondering how come the items are no longer showing the fiscal impact, financially, what source of where the funding, all of that is missing off of all of the items. Is that a new format or something?
I don't believe that's a new format, Ms. Hannah. We do represent the funding source when we ask the board to take action. But the funding source here, we talk about the fiscal impact, but we can start listing the funding source in the public content consistently, but we have listed that when we've asked the board to take action.
Well, it needs to be on here too, so that we can, so that we'll know when we're discussing it.
No, we can certainly do that.
And I don't know when it disappeared.
Yeah, we always do it, as Mr. Miller said, for the, we always do it for the actual board meetings. So the request from Ms. Hannah and the superintendent seems is that we want to include it on here too. Thank you.
I have one additional question. Sorry, I
Go
just
ahead, Ms.
realized
Lindsay.
it. And it's just so I can understand, that's the reason I'm asking. So the attachment already has, let me just pull it up. So there was a contract on here, and there's already been a signature put on that. Is that normal protocol before we go to approve it?
Mr. Moulton?
If it's already approved.
So this was digitally signed by the superintendent. We did have a need for services, but we are bringing this forward because it does need board approval. If you'll note on the extension proposal, it says June 2023. As you all are aware, we did have some situation with some of our security equipment recently, and we needed to move this forward. So
I just want to paint a picture of that, and I have two comments, I guess. You're stating that one of our, if I'm correct, one of our machines went down at our high school, which caused our line to be backlogged. All three machines were down at the beginning of the year, if the board remembers, where we weren't able to check bags. So that's why you see that there, because we had to go for an emergency repair right away.
Okay.
If I'm misspeaking, please correct me right now, but I'm
Okay.
Two go down at the Washington campus and one down at the Brookside campus.
Right. And this was my email about, oh, can we use OpenGate? And it's like, we
Yes.
don't have that yet. Okay,
That's exactly
perfect.
it.
Just wanted to make sure. So it wasn't that you were approving it, it was
Right,
the
we had an
one-time
emergency.
emergency, we needed support.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was clear. I
And
appreciate that.
for clarity, just because of protocol and procedures, and I'd be remiss because I don't ever want it to seem like I'm just asking when one board member asks for something. Do we have consensus of the board to list that? And I think I know the answer, but I do know that Ms. Lensing had posed a question, and I had asked that also at that time. So if we just can get consensus on that, because that is one of our agreements on how we would operate.
I think the expectation was to have these standardized so that if we have a standard layout, and I believe Ms. Gonzalez was also looking to aid with that so that we can minimize the questions like, what's it for? How long have we had it? What's the efficacy? What's the impact? So I thought that was kind of covered or at least in the works, but I would be in support of having it on there just for consistency purposes.
To do what?
Yes. So I mean, Ms. Lindsay was saying she supported Ms. Hannah. I'm saying yes, Mr. McBride.
To list the funding sources during the operations and student achievement meetings.
Well, they've always been there.
So, Mr. McBride.
Mr. Wilson, my concern in reference to this whole conversation, I would like to know how are we benefiting from these machines? If you can tell me incidents that occurred that if we didn't have the machines, we could have had some issues. So that's what I'd like to know. And I'm saying that to say because I remember when we first got the machines and the public didn't want them. And when we did get them, I can recall the security going around the building finding all kind of stuff because the kids was dropping it off before they came in the building. So I'm just wondering now, while we got the machines, can you recall incidents where you can say that why we really need them?
Yes, Mr. McBride. As I say, the X-ray machines, metal detectors, scanners, they're all a piece of the whole safety piece. And they're mainly to deter. But over the years, I've seen them catch brass knuckles, knives, butcher knives, fishing knives. Currently, we're catching vape pens. So we still continue to catch things. Generally, it's a deterrent. And I think if we didn't have these, that students or anyone would be more apt to try to bring things in to do harm in our schools.
Well, that's what I wanted to hear because I think that, you know, when we have these conversations about the machines, you know, we talk about maintenance and so on, so on, so on. So I just need to hear that to know that what we are doing the right thing by having the machines, one way or the other. Thank
Yes.
Yeah. So, Mr. McBride, the question was, do you support? I'll take that offline. It's fine.
I think it's easy. So on these slides, the current question is, do we want to list how we are going to pay for it? So which fund it's coming out of. We currently do it for the second and fourth Tuesday meetings. Do we also want it on the third Tuesday meeting slides if we're expending funds to show where it's coming out of?
Yeah, and it's always been there. I don't know how come it has been taken off.
So I said yes, Ms. Hannah said yes, Mr. Ewing said yes. Do you agree or disagree that we should list the funding on these slides for these third Tuesday meetings? Mr. McBride.
Oh, it doesn't matter to me how it's paid, as long as it get paid. But my concern was that
if it's listed, Mr. McBride, on
I'm
the
saying
agenda.
either don't make a difference to me.
So you pass?
He said yes.
If you want it listed,
Okay.
if you want to list and itemized, that's fine. I
Okay,
agree with that.
Mr. Riddle.
No, I'd say no.
Mr. Alexakis, you got a concern?
Not a concern. So what I was explaining. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, board, superintendent, community members, and staff. So what I was explaining to some of the colleagues in the back, what you see here in board docs generates templates. And so if you have an information item, if you have a presentation, it's going to generate sort of like that automatic template. If you have an action item, which you'll see at the Board of Education meetings on the second and fourth Tuesdays of the month, it generates a template that then has all of those drop downs. So it has that recommended action. It has all of the information that you'll generally see that the board that is pertinent to the board in order for them to make an informed decision where the funding's coming from, the cost, things of that nature. So what is selected for these meetings for student achievement operations will generally be your information or your presentation, and those don't have those templates, or those don't have those drop downs. So it's not that staff is like purposely not putting it in, it's that it doesn't prompt it. So in some instances you'll see like that extra PowerPoint that'll have some of that information included in it, and so we can ask to ensure that the PowerPoints that are attached or the presentations are attached have that info, but the template won't change because it's not an action item template, because then that's going to require, you know, for them to go through, it's going to require like that recommended action and everything. if that makes any sense.
And that makes sense. I think the question is I don't think there was any implication that the staff was trying to not include it. More so, we have to input the blurbs underneath, and if it could just be included in that blurb, additionally in the PowerPoint, that would be helpful too, just for transparency purposes.
I think we could talk to staff about ensuring that the funding source and that the dollar amounts are included in any of the public content or documents is acceptable. That's something that generally should be having done anyway.
And you're absolutely correct, Mr. Alajakis. I just went back and looked at some older committee meetings, and you're absolutely correct.
Thank you.
So are we changing the procedure? I'm confused now. Or are we leaving it alone the way it is?
We want consensus. I do apologize.
For what?
I'm apologizing for myself because it appears to be, is we're talking about system things and how things appear, and so the content is what I'm personally most concerned with right now. And so if there are changes that we want to make or recommendations, and like Nick has said, is that sometimes something will catch our attention, but this has been the operating norm, so we can change that. And that's all the superintendent was trying to do, was say, is this a board consensus, or is this just one board member that has a suggestion? It seems like they can adjust it. So what I'm hoping is that we can get back through this agenda, because we still have another student achievement meeting. So you have the microphone, Mr. Edwards, and then I'm going to Mrs. Sabecki.
Okay, I just really want to ask also, we talking about this funding and paying out. When we talking about safety officers, how many do we currently have inside of our schools? And I'm specifically talking about the junior high schools and the high schools.
Currently, we have 23 at the Washington campus, 27 at the Brookside campus. We have 3 each at Juarez, Benny, Smith, and what's the other one?
Wilson.
Abbott. Lewis has 5.
So there it is, y'all. They got a problem. When you're talking about Washington campus, how many kids is in that building? I'm going to talk about Brookside, and Mr. Vukovich pointed out some of the safety hazards there as far as the trafficking, right? And so here we go again. There's not enough safety officers in those buildings to deal with the things that's going on currently in these spaces. And I'm sorry to say that, because when you look at Brookside, let's talk about when you got lunch going on. How many have to be in lunch? And then what's not in the hallway? What I'm simply saying is these kids understand movement. They know where people are. We are locking the bathrooms. We have metal detectors, but vapes are still getting inside the buildings.
So, Mr. Edwards, just for time, I think that's an important point. I know that the recommended action is about the x-ray machines and the service contract, but what Mr. Edwards is also bringing up the fact, and I know you do it, but you may want to come back, is if there's a requirement for additional staffing.
Can I address that?
Sure.
In my the budget that just was proposed, I have additional 6 safety officers to cover the cafeterias, just like you're saying. So I can put those additional 6. I'm bringing them in from 10:30 to 6:30. That will relieve the cafeteria personnel, so we can have more staff on the floor. I've asked for an additional 3 at Washington campus, which was approved. An additional 4 safety officers for the middle school, with the exception of Lewis, because Lewis has 5 already. And an additional safety officer was approved for ALC.
And the last thing, just something to throw out here where community can come in. We know a lot of community cannot get inside the building. That's fine. But I think that there's something that we can create where we can have community members outside of the building before school while they're going in, constantly, rotating the parameters, making sure things of that nature, because your guys can't see everything. it's a lot going on, and we always talk about this. What happens inside of the community goes into the schools, and what happens in the schools comes out to the community. I'm trying to see how can this community help without you guys writing a check of some kind, you know, because it got to be a way that we can work together. And again, I know we're on the machines, but we have to look at just spending that money out for the training and things like that nature, because for me, y'all, we can do something else with that funding. Seriously.
Can I get some clarification? We have the, I hope this is the right name, the dad dogs?
Walk dogs.
Walk dogs, right? And those
or
are
dads of great students.
dads of great students, right? And so that's not just fathers of students that are in the schools right now, but any fathers in the community. Is that accurate or inaccurate?
Any fathers or father figures. So
Okay.
yes, it would, I guess, male by now.
Yeah.
Going through the Friends training, right? So there's a training that they're required to go to. It gives them a pass. But yes, there's the Walk Dogs or Dads of Great Students, which is a good program that can be used. I think there's a way, and we can take that conversation offline, like Mr. Edwards was speaking about with what community, you know, again, and I'm gonna just be honest, you don't necessarily, my fears when something happens is if one of those individuals inserts themselves into a situation. So I think it can be done with training. So we can talk about what that would look like. But I know as a parent myself, and you know, sometimes it's also if we see them, who put their hands on the kid. And you may be just trying to break up a fight, but it's different when they're wearing that yellow shirt instead of when they're wearing a hoodie like me. So I do want to say yes, but let's figure out what that could look like.
Who's running the dad's program? I know Mr. Thompson used to, and I haven't heard of no other name, so to speak.
Yeah, bring it back.
Yeah, I honestly, off the top of my head, I'm actually not sure, but I'll come back with that, Mr. Edwards, and I'll email you.
Mr. Sabecki?
All right, here you go. I'm going to answer a lot of your questions, Mr. Riddle. The machines are HIPE Plus. Provider for the machines is Secure Mart, LLC. The school district owns the machines. The last time the machines were, routine maintenance was done on the machines was 4/22 of 22. Smith Detection System does the preventative maintenance on the x-ray machines. Yearly certification is not required for the machines. I FOIA'd that back in February, and that's what I got back from my FOIA request. And they gave me a link to a brochure if I want to see about the machines. You got to go on it. But my other question is x-ray machines. Honestly, what's the point of having them? I'm going to be honest. Can't search the kids even if they go off. I've witnessed it numerous times at both campuses. Kids walk in, the machines beep, and they send the kid through it again. It beeps. They send them through it again. It beeps. They wand them. It beeps. I don't have nothing, and they let them go. I've seen a whole bus get off from the pace, and all the students walk through the machine, and it beeped on everybody. Nobody was stopped. And I witnessed this myself, so no one can say this don't happen. I know everything about the x-ray machines too. Like I said, I worked at the jail and I did courts for years. So I know all about the x-ray machines. And that's one of the reasons why I FOIA'd the x-ray machines a while ago, because just for that reason, because people were walking through them and they're beeping, but no one's being stopped. And at Brookside campus, I was there when a kid walked through it and they sent him back through it 6 times and then wanded him and it still beeped. And okay, go, because they can't search them. So even if they had something, I know they're there more for a deterrent, but kids can still walk into school with stuff because you can't search the students. So that's my thing. You know, why put all this money in them if we're not even going to use them for the purpose that they're supposed to be for?
Again, can I clarify? We tend to mix up the stand-up metal detectors with the x-ray machine. And Mr. Sabecki, what you're talking about is the metal detectors. The x-ray scanners are what the children put their bags through and they scan, and it gives us images. So we can actually see an image if there's a gun, a knife, or something dangerous in those. The metal detectors are walk through.
But that's my point. If a student has a knife, a gun, or whatever on them, they don't go through the x-ray machine. They walk through the stand-ups, so they just beep. I know how they work.
So what we do when the procedure is when we do, When you walk through the metal detectors, it'll show you exactly where it's located. There's a light. We want them. We have them divest of everything. I've never had of a case where it continually goes off unless there's something in their shoes where there's metal or a Chromebook or something like that, or a belt buckle. So, but we will look into the procedures, and I'll get back to you on that.
Thank you, Mr. Becky. Item J, MCL 2023 National Convening. Information is there. Item has been presented. Item K, resolution of the Board of Education authorize interfund loans for the working cash fund as outlined 105 Illinois ILCS 5-2 or /20-5. The information is there. Any questions?
Is this the thing that we did? It's another one? It's in addition to the one we did?
Can you speak to it, Ms. Polk?
Board President, board members, superintendent and community, sorry. This is another one because the other one was for the operating funds outside of the working cash. And so because we have limited funds that are in those funds, we had specific information according to legal that we needed to submit to loan from the working cash fund. And so that's why we're coming back to you. Most of our reserve monies, as I mentioned before, is in the working cash fund. And so that's what this is. If at any time we have a shortfall of cash, I need to have the authority from the board by statute to be able to temporarily loan the money and then pay it back. And that's what this is.
Why would you have to do that, Ms. Polk?
Because of timing of receipts. So for instance, like we're doing capital projects, if we spend the money and then we haven't gotten our reimbursements back, or for grants, those are typically the reasons why there would be a delay in receipts, then we have to loan from those funds that you are giving me the authority to loan from so that we can make those payments, because obviously you cannot pay what you don't have. If you don't have the cash, you can't pay it. A budget is a little bit different. That's just what we assume that we're going to get by the end of the year, but cash is cash. If you don't have it, you can't spend it. So we have to loan and put it in those funds so that we can make those payments.
I have a question. So how routine is it to not do it just one time, but 2 times?
Normally I do, I try to combine them, but we're looking at the statute, and if there's a revisions in the law, then that's why this has to come back, because the statute that I previously submitted did not include all of the requirements for working cash. And so legal advised that I needed to come back with this one.
Okay, and if we ever had an issue with our finances doing this in the past?
No.
Okay. And do you anticipate any issues for this year?
No.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Polk. All right, we are now, the reports have been submitted there for information. We had the 2, which are just updates, and it was pointed out, right, that item F was not added until today. So I do appreciate Ms. Lindsay and want to remind the administration of the expectations. Which one, Mr.
Yeah.
It was G also, Mr. Vukovic.
Yeah, those 3.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask, especially those I know they were put there for information reports, right? If the board had questions, the items and when they're expected to be completed as to where they are up to date are also there. The exit survey, I really want to be able to have a conversation about. And I know that was put there, but it's 8 or 9.
So I will apologize that, and we do hear operations that needs to be in on Friday, please. And then the exit survey, we will bring it back so that we can have some robust discussion around that. So if we could just put a stick pin on that, and we will bring it back so that the board it will allow for the board to ask questions and us to be able to respond to that.
In community too, and I would like to superintendent and staff combine, or I guess from my own ignorance, has the People's Company been given that exit survey data?
This current exit survey data is produced as of Friday, so we will be sharing it with them. But as far as the questions and prior feedback, that's been part of the variety of data collection that they have.
Okay.
Ms. Hannah, while you're looking at that, so just as a note, we will bring back the exit survey so the public can ask questions at our next student achievement meeting.
Okay, right.
So Mr. Moulton, please make a note of that we do bring that back, and that is on October's student achievement meeting.
And Superintendent, I had submitted questions. I had submitted a research of questions for a staff, all district staff survey. And I've never heard anything more about that.
So Ms. Hannah, I think I know what you're talking about, but I'm not prepared to speak on that right now. So if you can give me tomorrow to refresh my memory and circle back with you.
Okay, because I had sent it to you and the board.
I think I do know what you're talking about. It's been some time. So if you just will allow me to revisit that tomorrow, and then I will circle back with the board as a whole.
I see Ms. Vukovic before, as I want to be to refresh and to help you, Superintendent, is part of why we held off, and it was stated at the time was the superintendent wanted us to see the 5 essentials data in those questions to see if there was alignment, because that is a state assessment. So now that the board has received that, Superintendent, if you would compare the two and come back with a suggested action for the board.
That's what I thought it was on, and I just didn't want to comment on that till I refresh it. But yes, I will.
Ms. Vukovic.
So on the exit survey, I know you said you're going to bring it back, but it said there was only 14% response rate. So according to this, I know it said it was only from 2021 to 2023, correct?
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
That's the,
yes.
It didn't cover the years before that. Even though we'd been asking about it for probably, I asked for it before I retired in 19. We had not personally for it, but for other people and other teachers to be able to fill out a survey, and it just then started taking place in 2021, correct?
So prior to that, we did provide, the reason why it's dated for 2021 is we provided in June of 2021, that was the last update. We actually provided that update at the Trapp Auditorium, I believe. If it would be helpful when we bring this back in October to bring the previous presentation as well, we can certainly do that. So that was the last time we updated, but you are correct. This hasn't been a regular ongoing update. That actually might have been the first one, so around 2019, 2020. But in 2021 in the summer, we had that presentation, and this data captures from that time to current.
Because according to what I read in the car on the way here, because it was put in so late today, it stated that they used the employee's most recent cell phone number on record, and that's how they contacted them. So I'm just curious, because I know that usually when somebody leaves, they cut their email off like that day, the WPS 60 email. So if any sort of communication, possibly that's why I didn't get one, but I know of people who retired or left the district in 2020, this past spring and 2022, and they never got exit surveys, and they know multiple people have told me this. So I don't know how accurate this information would be. So hopefully next week or next month when this is presented, we find out exactly how this information was, how they found it or looked for it, or how they, was it a link? Was there a place for somebody to put a comment? Because a lot of it is just approved or disapproved. I mean, it was not.
Right.
I'm sure they did it, so that they could make a pie chart out of it and the data would just be right in there. But I find it hard to believe that only 14% of the people responded to that, if they were actually looked for, and big effort was made to reach out to the people that left for whatever reason. Because retirees should have also been involved in the questioning. I did see there was one pie chart that showed retirees and their answers, but some people retired early because of whatever complaints they had with the district or their school or whatever it was. So I would like to have more information on exactly how this information was collected and in what way. If it was a link on it was sent to their cell phone, was it also sent to a personal email? I mean, that kind of stuff. So hopefully all that will be answered in the October one, if somebody's marking that down, because I think that would be valuable information if one of the goals is to try to keep staff here. If they don't have usually they don't want to talk while they're still here because they're afraid of retaliation. So their only time they can vent and actually say why they're leaving, if they're leaving other than retiring, would be in some sort of an exit survey. And so
Thank you, Ms. Vukovich.
It says it was sent to the cell phone.
Yeah, I know, but that Ms. Vukovich is raising a point about not how it was sent, right? And I just want to say thank you to Ms. Vukovich, because last time, even with herself, what did we realize, right, is that they were sending it to a home phone, right? And so when we ask these questions, sometimes it allows us to be better at the delivery method. So I do want to say is that, 14% is not a majority.
No, it's not.
Go ahead, Ms. Lindsay.
So while we're on that and we're preparing to have a deeper dive in the discussion for October, if we could look at those pie charts and maybe group the feelings together, right? Because you have like very dissatisfied here, and then satisfied, and then dissatisfied. It looks like it's alphabetical, but if we could organize it by range of emotion, I think that's going to be clear for the community. That's just my feedback on that piece. I more had questions on F and G to see how we're feeling with where we are in the timeline. Do we feel confident that we've gained the information that we expected to gain at this stage and that we're on track to finish on time? Because I know they extended how long the project would take based on a prior experience. So I just wanted to feel for, this is where we are timeline-wise, and this is how we're feeling about it. We'll feel confident that we're getting the information we need to be on track to finish by the deadline stated in the PowerPoint.
Absolutely. I would like to address the last three items, F, G, and H. And I will take them in the reverse order. So just quickly, I did want to mention one of the things that I discussed with Mr. Figueroa is we're going to bring this back in October, obviously, but our exit survey data needs to build our retention strategies in the district. So that's the real big takeaway from this for the HR department. So I just want to put that out there because that is the next step, as well as increasing participation. For item G, the compensation study, there is an attachment, and yes, it was uploaded today. We do have a 2-week buffer there to bring that back next month. Our original timeline was October 1 or the end of September. So we have a 2-week buffer there. So we're within that 2-week buffer at this point in time as of today. And for the human resources audit, there was a request put on the table because a lot of this work was scheduled to take place June, July, August, September, specifically June, July, August. There was a request when we met with the company, with the HR team, to delay some of those items so we could have those conversations and provide a lot of that information, and they actually understood the intent, how we're implementing practices and procedures because of the height of individuals exiting the district as well as onboarding. So we did have that discussion with them. What's attached here does reflect that, but we feel good where we are with that because there's a myriad of several documents being reviewed, policies, procedures, evaluation forms, job descriptions, as well as conducting interviews one-on-one with staff, focus groups, surveys, etc. So all that's being built into their what you see here today.
I have a follow-up question. So when they are having these interviews with staff, where are those interviews being held? Is it on school property? Is it outside of school property?
So a lot of those are being held virtually because they're talking to several individuals in several departments and they are working off of a script, but obviously the questions do get tailored based on somebody's role in the organization.
Okay, so when our staff is engaging in those, are they doing those from the comfort of their home?
It depends on when they're scheduling them.
Okay.
I participated in one myself. I did it from my office because I scheduled it during the day, but staff were prompted with the questions and asked, when are you available to meet? So I can't say they were all at home or at work, but they were given the option to schedule based on their convenience.
So then we can assume that because they are scheduling it themselves, they're doing it in a way where they feel safe and comfortable to answer the questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Ms. Hannah, final question.
Speaking to Ms. Vukovic, I had a conversation, and I cannot remember if I talked to you or you. But I talked about when, particularly when retirees and anybody leave the district, that we should not automatically shut off the emails for a period of time, because we know that we're still doing district business with, like, retirees having to take care of their retirement things and pensions and all of that stuff, and all of that is taking care of district business. And if access is taken away from them, it makes it very difficult for them to complete all of this this important function for the rest of their life. You know, I mean, these things, they got to do that. And so I'm hoping that, I don't know who I spoke to about that.
I know you and I had a conversation about that.
Okay, and so I'm hoping that we could at least think about doing that for the people, particularly our retirees, when they leave our district. Don't right away cut off the communication, because they still have important business pertaining to the district that they have to take care of. And it makes no sense. I mean, it doesn't make for kind of friendly people. You know what I'm saying? And so hopefully we can change that.
So we will circle back with the board on that.
Go ahead, Ms. Vukovic.
Is that it? Yeah. On your point, that's exactly right, because, you know, we're like, I was paid till August when I retired, and so all the retirees get your checks are 12 months, and we had no access to all of the, you know, you can look up what your paychecks were each month and insurance. All of that is accessed by, I don't even remember, I don't think it was Infinite Campus, but whatever it was called at that time. They've changed the name.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's all cut off because you're cut off the day you walk out the building,
right,
out of the building, it does affect things. It should wait, should be till, I understand if someone quits you don't want them to have access to the email here any longer. Obviously,
Right.
they're going to work somewhere else.
Absolutely.
But for people that are retiring,
Right.
they should have it until August 30th because.
And even when people are resigning, I mean, we're not trying to hurt people.
Right.
You know, we want to be helpful to and value our staff when they leave from servicing our district. And so I'm certainly hoping that we can look into that. And while we're talking about that, I am hoping that, because I've been getting calls about this regarding the right to return to work for the retirees, and I'm hoping that we have some type of update, because from all of my research in reference to that process, it's a long process, and it has to go from here to Springfield to the Row and back to here, and we need that, because we're in the place where we're needing our substitutes, and we have those that have graciously came back, being retired people, and we have an opportunity to keep those retired people quality educators in our district for probably a whole school year, and don't have to worry about them leaving and then coming and getting other people to walk into the classrooms. Kids gotta, get used to somebody else, but that is very, very important, people, and I am certainly hoping that we can get some kind of update where we are in the process of getting that thing taken care of.
Noted.
Really quick, because I know at least in corporate America, there's concerns whether you retire or you leave voluntarily or you terminate certain access to the information. So what is the process we have in place now to ensure that we have appropriate contact information for our retirees or those leaving the district, to ensure that we can get them this information if they're not going to have access to their district email? Do we have a process?
I can. Mr. Figueroa?
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, board members and members of the public. We do keep all those records, not only in the computer system, in our personal system that we have in the system that we're using, but we also have files with all the information. So we need to access, normally we have all the information for the applications. When they're being on board, all of that personal information is secure in those systems for years. So we do have the access. I heard the situation with the telephone numbers and the questions about the survey. Page number 3 of the presentation specifically addressed that question, indicating that we use text and we go through the cell phone on record, right? So when they're onboarding, they are identifying those cell numbers, and as you know, in this time and age, almost no one have lines at home. Most of the people, the great majority, they are using cellular numbers. So we do have access to that, and then those text messages, it's not an email, but the text message go directly to the phone. There might be some reason why we have lower participation, and we will discuss that. One of the reasons might be that it's a lengthy link for them to answer so many questions. So yes, we're learning from the experience. We might have to concise this. And in the presentation, we also announced that we will have some incentive and some promotions for them to compete. I think that the conversation of retention is critical at this time and age with our job market. I will be addressing this also with administrators and supervisors. HR will prepare or will facilitate a presentation in the area of retention to district leaders, supervisors, and everyone who is hiring or supervising individuals here in the district.
Mr. Figueroa, let me just restate my question because I think there was a misunderstanding. So I understand that when we onboard, we collect this information. My question is, when we receive notification that they will no longer work for our district, are we double checking with them that the information we have on file is correct in terms of their email and their cell phone number?
No, I don't believe that we are verifying if their separation time, at the separation time, if the information is accurate at that time. No, we are depending that all the employees during the school year or their tenure here, they have the means to electronically update their information as they continue working in the district. But sometimes telephone number change, sometimes addresses change, people move from one neighborhood to another or another town. So we are trusting that that they are updating that information, as that is the way in which we communicate with them. We certainly can make an effort to remind everyone to make sure that they look at that information. And I will also like to make a clarification. After they separate, obviously it's not HR, but the technology department is the one who controls the access to the emails at that point. So they are the one who cut. But anything that is financial, they have the portal. I think that was the word that you were looking for. And actually last week I got someone who left over a year ago, and they need access to their pay stuff and things like that in terms of their taxes for some reason. And there is a mechanism after they exit the district and they no longer have the district email active, that they can come in, identifying themselves with their social security number and things like that, that they can get access to that on a regular basis for some number of years, not just weeks or months.
Okay, it's my personal opinion that I think we should be on the exiting process, verifying we have the correct information on file, being proactive, not waiting for it, because if we're mailing out important information, like I still get from a job I haven't had for 10 years, information about my 401k, right? And so that happened because when I left, they verified, did you change anything? And if I move from that point, yes, I understand there's a component and an onus on me to notify them so that I continue to get that information. But for me, I think it's a very basic step that we should be implementing of, let's verify before you leave what we have is correct. In case we need to get in contact with you, we can. And it's not that we're gonna be calling them and harassing them like our robocalls, right? It's purely for necessary purposes.
Well, thank you for the recommendation.
Okay, and before we...
And principals have the most up-to-date information. So I think that HR and the principals, because we have to fill out an information sheet at the beginning of the year, every year, so they know, you know, who's your first emergency contact in case you get sick at school or something. They would be the ones that would have, if something changed. So let's connect
Yeah, if they could just
HR
initial off
with
and say this
the
is
principal.
accurate and get it to HR, that would make sense.
But what was just said about the cell phone number, now, we've had discussion about this before. My wife retired in 2019 and has never received an exit interview. And you said it's sent to the cell phone. She's had the same cell phone number since 2000. This district has had that all those years. And she never received it. And trust me, if she did, I would know she received that, because she would be brutally honest with you all about the way she was treated. So she never received it. There was a breakdown in your system about sending it out if it was by text.
If you allowed me, actually I was in Florida on vacation when I respond to the email. We verify the files, and the situation at that time through email, and I can provide you a copy of the email if you wish so, was that she did not listed her cell phone in iVision. What she listed was a home number at that time. So I will share with you a copy of the email just so we are on the right page, respectfully, obviously.
Plenty of other people had her cell number in this district.
Yeah, I think it's a process piece, right? I personally wouldn't prefer, I get it, because Ms. Vukovic bringing it to our attention is what prompted us to change the process. So acknowledged, and I'm sorry that you did not get the survey when it was intended, Ms. Vukovic, but I do appreciate that we are now using cell phones and cell phone numbers. I like the suggestion that Ms. Lansing provided about let's try and be proactive, even like both and, right? I'm an employer and I'm an employee, and people have a responsibility to make sure they have up-to-date information, but a reminder doesn't hurt anybody. I'm gonna give you the final word because it is 8:35, Ms. Statler.
Around 7.
And we have currently how many staff in the district?
Around 1,900 people, 2,000.
And 7 employees. So I'm keep calling these numbers out because at some point we have to figure out this is what the breakdown is at. You know, partially overworked and things of that nature. You know what I'm saying? We really, really have to look at that. And this district being the size that it is, it should have always been a policy that there should have been some type of exit policy for employees, which is a professional way. And the other piece is, why are we even texting cell phones? Now, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm getting into this, and I'm being in all of these spaces and things like this, and I'm just saying this in the district, you guys, professional communication is through an email. At that point, you can provide proof that you had sent this email. So we got to look at some of these things. And then the last thing is, and I know y'all gonna be upset, what is the policy when someone is using your signature to do documentation and things of that nature as an employee of this district? And me being a stakeholder, taxpayer, and you working for this district, do we have some type of ethical pledge that employees be a certain way when it comes to stakeholders? Because we've had a situation and we're gonna keep on talking about it until something is done about it. I'm gonna make that very clear. So I'm gonna keep on speaking on this, but a situation that's occurred, it is well out in the community. A director here, your signature was used. I've personally contacted the Waukegan Police Department, and they told me that I can't do nothing because it wasn't my signature. And so publicly, I'm asking you, why haven't you done anything about this situation if in fact your signature was used?
Mr. Edwards, Mr. Figueroa cannot speak on personnel issues.
Oh, I thought he could because he was HR.
He cannot
Not
speak
publicly.
Not publicly.
Oh, okay. But caution,
We
I'm
hear
gonna
you.
say this and then I'm gonna put the mic down. When it happened to Dr. Hill, her name was mentioned publicly.
All the time.
It was mentioned publicly, y'all. This is what I'm talking about. We know this, we see the difference. We have to address this. It's not gonna go to sleep. I'm not gonna let it go. I'm gonna keep on speaking about it at every meeting until this is addressed. We talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. We talking about that, we're promoting. This is the thing, we have to do something about this. Thank you.
Yeah, and
I just have a very quick question, and it's just regarding the amount of people at Western District. You mentioned 1,900 employees.
19 to 2,000, I believe.
How many of those are, and I'm sorry for my ignorance, I'm not very experienced
1100s, and I will prefer to go and get the data because it might change, right? 1100.
And how many of those teachers are substitutes, long-term subs right now?
I would say we have, I would say at least 80 long-term subs.
And how many of those are retired teachers?
I will have to look into that because retired teachers, and I heard the conversation, they can sub in the district up to 120 days. Yes.
Ms. Hinojosa, we have a meeting set. I'll bring those numbers with me. Okay? If you could just write them down so I capture them because I was looking, but I think I heard you, and just give me a piece of paper. I'll bring them for our meeting. Okay?
All right, now I've got an issue, and it's kind of regarding, well, no, it's regarding FOIAs, and I'm going to say that's under operations, right? No?
That will be the legal office.
Legal office? Okay, well, maybe, Superintendent, maybe you could take note of this, please. I did a FOIA, and this is how this was generated. I did a FOIA, and I was told that the information was unduly burdensome because the data was off-site, and the data was being held by outside vendor. And so my question, and you don't have to answer now, right? Why is the district's data in the hands of outside vendors to the point where we cannot access district information with the push of a button? And we have all of these millions upon millions of dollars that we have spent for our technology here in our district. And so in other words, any information before 2018 cannot be accessed unless it goes through an outside vendor, and it's off-site. Why is our district business being handled like that? And our information should be accessible to our district through our computer system. And I don't understand that. And if that is happening, I don't know, I may have to call somebody higher than me.
Yeah, let's get the facts first and come back with a report on what Ms. Hannah
Well,
is speaking about.
With all due respect, Mr. President, this is what I was told in a reply from a FOIA.
Ms. Hannah, all I asked for was the facts. It's 8:43. I have no idea what you're talking about, so I want to understand the information so that if I support you, if there's an issue, let's figure it out. I don't know what you're talking about, and that's okay. You brought it to the board. Superintendent, you're going to look into what this issue is, and you're going to bring it back to report out. All right. With that, I'd like to call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Riddle, second by Ms. Lindsay. All in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? Meeting is now adjourned. If we can take a 7-minute break and be back at 8:50. 8:53. I'd like to call to order the September 19, 2023 Student Achievement Meeting. If I could have a roll call, please.
Mr. McBride. Mr. Riddle. Ms. Hannah. Ms. Gonzalez. Ms. Fabian. Ms. Lensing.
Here.
President Ewing.
Here, Mr. Riddle is here. He's in the audience. Board members Lensing and not Lensing. Sorry,
Yeah,
board
I
member
was like-
Gonzalez and Fabian are not present. We have item 3A, approval of the August 15, 2023 minutes. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Lensing, second by Ms. Hannah. Any comments, questions, corrections to the minutes? All in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Mr. Riddle is not voting as he was not present. All right, everything has been presented for information, so we're going to handle this the same way that we handled the other one. I'll go through the line items. We do want to thank the ASAP department for making sure that all attachments were uploaded for board review. So now we got 5A, AOEC professional development request. The information is there. Any questions, comments on that? Item B, renewal of CKLA on-site coaching for all elementary schools for school year 24. Any questions? Ms.
Just
Lindsay?
terrific.
And then you, Rick, next.
So there's been a lot of information regarding the science of reading and the many things that we are doing. It comes across as duplicating a lot of efforts instead of streamlining and using one to go with. So can you explain how this?
First of all, good evening, Board President, Superintendent, members of the board, colleagues and community members. So that's an excellent point. I'm going to ask Pam Crowell to come up to speak to that and to talk about the other aspects of the framework that we have regarding the science of reading.
Hi, good evening, board. Thank you for the question. So this specifically is not duplicating. This is coaching directly related to implementation of our Tier 1 phonics curriculum. So it's very specific around teaching and implementing that curriculum, which is based on the science of reading. The rest of our training is adult learning and implementation around the research that supports evidence-based literacy. So they're two different buckets of work.
So then, help me understand really quick. This is based in Orton Gillingham?
So CKLA Skills is a multi-sensory explicit systematic phonics program for our kinder through second grade monolingual learners. And in second grade, it's also offered to our dual language students. So it is the curriculum that we teach, and this coaching that was provided last year has been requested again by teachers and building leaders to support that implementation. Yeah, so Orton Gillingham, again, is training around a framework of how to approach literacy instruction. So, for example, we trained our instructional coaches in Orton Gillingham because they work regularly with our teachers. So what we know is that Tier 1 curriculum will never meet the needs of all learners in front of a teacher as written. So we want to empower our teachers to layer supports. Orton Gillingham offers additional strategies that may not be included in the Tier 1 curriculum that teachers can apply, right? This on-site coaching is more around how to navigate the pieces of the curriculum, and they get to choose from a menu of options that was in the attachments that would best meet the teams at that school. So each elementary gets to cater this PD to their own needs.
And,
Mr. Riddle has a question.
Ms. Crowley?
I'm going to go to Mr. Riddle and I'll come back to you, Ms. Hannah. Go ahead, Mr. Riddle.
So, ma'am, this is with Amplify too, and we've been using them for quite a few years, right?
Yeah, so we've used Amplify for several years as part of an assessment platform and then an intervention platform. And they acquired the core knowledge language arts curriculum, and we use the skills portion of that for phonics.
Right, right. I did talk to them at a convention, at one of the vendors at a convention, the last one we went to that was down in Miami, and I remember she was saying, yes, and we work extensively with Waukegan, and I'm glad to see that we're expanding that coverage, especially for these, for each one of the elementaries. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hannah.
Yeah, now, you know me, Ms. Crawford, okay, and I'm still waiting, Dr. Cesario, for that committee. But, now that is from, pre-K to second?
Kinder through second.
Kinder through second.
Yep.
Okay, and now where are we with, 3 and above?
Yeah, so the board graciously approved our 95% core phonics program. That's a 30-minute-a-day explicit systematic grade level phonics program for third through fifth grade. And in fact, the coaching that has happened through CKLA has been so successful that we're looking at partnering with 95% to provide similar support to our third through fifth grade teachers. That's the symposium that you all were invited to in October.
Okay.
Yep, so we have a phonics curriculum in place, K-5.
K-5.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and now here the Dr. Cesario question.
Sure.
What the, that's K-5, we are way, okay. Kinder through 5, we got covered. Okay, now I'm looking to catch up those students from
6 to 12.
6 to 12.
And we are also working on that. That part of the framework that I mentioned, Ms. Lensing, is also inclusive of that. We're still working on that, so that's something that's still in progress. But that is something that we're not being dismissive of, or we're including that, but we are scaling up. And so it does take time. And we started with TutorMate, and then moved in tandem with CKLA. So we had that one-on-one support for our kinder, then our first, and then our second, and then we built in CKLA, and the next piece was to go up. And so right now, what we're doing in the middle school is that's what we're starting to focus on, is where can we incorporate that and then segue that into the high school.
And so, okay, and now jumping back. Kinder to 2. Okay, we started working with them with this just this school year?
TutorMate was about 3 years ago. With CKLA, that was also a couple of years ago. But right now, what you're going to approve at the next meeting for this is really the coaching support for each school for the teachers that are there. So it'd be ongoing coaching, and it'd be differentiated to support different areas of need across those schools.
Okay, and so my question is, okay, we've been doing this for...
CKLA, I think we've been doing for 3 years. For 3 years, yeah. Started under Dr. Brown, Kevin Brown, yeah.
So I am looking, Superintendent, I know that we got the presentation on the data, right? And I'm looking to see, to make sure that what we're doing is producing positive results for the students. Okay, and that's what I'm looking.
Yeah, and I think when Mr. Riddle mentioned the Amplify piece and using those assessments, those diagnostic tools, but just again, those diagnostic tools and the results will vary based on the students who are coming in and where they're at developmentally. But we can definitely share that information. We can have Dr. Brown share that information. But it is relative to where they started out, because we know that different kids are going to start out at different levels. So especially in that age range, there's a wide range. So I want to be very clear about that and not mislead at all.
Yeah, because that's a hard pill for me to swallow, only because I taught ESL to adult men. They were all over the place.
Yeah.
From different countries with different languages, and it didn't matter where they were. It was where I started.
Yeah.
And how it was done that it was successful.
And that's what we're trying to do right now with the training too, is to provide that support so there is more consistency across the board.
One thing I will encourage the district to pursue, I know we got a lot of things that we are juggling, but to start, there's a movement in which school districts are looking to pay for results, where if we are purchasing trainings or software, you make it very, very narrow and specific, but 60% of, up to 60% of payment is actually based on results, and there are incentives. So meaning if we set a budget of $1 million, right, they may get 600,000. They wouldn't get the rest unless they actually produced the results that we were looking for. But if they overachieved in the results, we may have an actual max cap of like 1.5. So there are school districts that are actively implementing this model. It is not an easy model to switch to, but it is a move away from fees for service, right? We showed up, we provided the PD, we did the training, right? And then you guys come back to the board and you say, well, the student data may or may not have moved, where you would say, hey, if we do this, these are the expected results. And you can make it very, very narrow, but I would like us to, there's a cohort that's starting in January and February. I told Ms. Lindsay with everything we got balancing, I didn't know, but I did want to at least bring it up here because I think it addresses one of the concerns that Ms. Hannah and other board members have had. Is I don't want to just pay for a service. I want to tie that service to an expected result.
I think it's a great idea, and I think it's something we can talk to Joe Clary about too when we're looking at the procurement process and contracts. So great idea.
And I do know that Ms. Lindsay, and I believe it was Mr. Riddle, went to that session. So I hope, I was not at that session, so we will be reaching out just to hear more about that from both of you.
That would be great.
I can forward the
information to have.
PowerPoint. I've been downloading.
Thank you.
That would be great. Thanks.
Sorry, with that, Mr. Ewing and I at the CUBE conference that we recently attended, we're also talking about alternative options that we could possibly look at for our older students, right? Because what we're seeing, at least what I'm hearing from our older grade level staff members, is that they want to focus on content and not necessarily the science of reading, right? Which is understandable. You got into the field to teach math or to teach social science. However, our students can't access that without properly having these foundational skills. So I think maybe that's just a conversation that we have, and they can take some of those pieces to see what's going to fit, because we don't want to overload our staff, but we also need to put these kids first. So I'm going to encourage all of our district staff members to jump on this train of the science of reading, because it's going to benefit everyone. But we can maybe have some discussions about what alternative options would look like so we can avoid some burnout.
Yeah, so that's actually part of the plan there too, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because we can't just push all at once, and that's why it's scaffolded up. And yes, there is a sense of urgency, but it's also about a paradigm shift, specifically what you said, moving from content-based, I am a history teacher, I am a math teacher, to I am a teacher, right? And that the science of reading piece is across all content areas, and that we're all first and foremost reading teachers. And so there's the training and professional development starts with that really at 6th through 12th grade. So, but yeah, if you could share both of those, if it's a deck or any other information that you and Mr. Riddle have, that would be great. Thanks.
No, thank you. I just wanted to call that out. But glad to see that we're moving forward. Is literacy as a right is what we're all trying to do, is to make sure that our students can access the literature. So thank you. Appreciate you finding those opportunities. FC approval to attend the NADC, National Athletic Director Conference.
Oh, sorry. I have a question or a comment. And it does tie back to A and any professional development. So as far as our administrators go, I'm still waiting on information on how it's been impactful for the district to attend these conferences. So I understand it's an operations meeting We're not going to have everybody here to talk to us about how it's going to benefit the students, how it's going to benefit the district. Not every single one is here, but we can definitely get into the specifics.
Colette is here. She can answer that question if you want.
And that's fine for this specific one, but I'm just saying generally for next week, when we do have these items up for a vote, that is something that I'm going to be looking for specifically, because these are funds and we need to make sure the students are getting impacted, right? And so as far as this one goes, from what I understand is with our capital improvements, there's going to be some information around turf and this, that, and the other thing. Is the district in a position where we're going to be able to afford what she learns about to put into place this year? Or are we going to have to put that on hold for a couple of years and then there's new advancements? So I want to make sure it's going to be a worthwhile investment for this conference.
So I can't speak specifically to the turf piece, but I would say in general, when administrators such as Colette and others attend conferences, it's much like what you and Mr. Riddle just brought back. It's you're going to conferences, you're networking, you're bringing back ideas and resources. They might not necessarily be implemented to impact student achievement immediately, but they are opportunities to network and to hear about new ideas and to find out about different sources of possible grants. There's a number of pieces that it can impact. So I can let Colette come up and speak specifically to some of the questions you had, but again, just in general, I think those are some of the opportunities that we're trying to afford our administrators and other folks who are going out to professional development.
Yeah, because it's all new. When it comes to, listen what I'm saying, Dr. Sorrell.
Sure.
It's all new about in reference to all of these administrative conferences and all of that stuff. You know, that it's kind of unprecedented. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, because it was this is just a new, I guess, a new shift. I guess you could say, you know, in terms of, you know, conferences and stuff that that the district is expending funds for.
Okay, noted. And we'll try to expand on how it aligns to goals and it supports not only the development of the individual, but how it's impactful to students as well.
Ms. Urbach, if you get the microphone, and then Mr. Sabecki, if you got a question. After Ms. Urbach.
Oh, wait, let me get your mic.
I don't think they understood your question.
Like, because we had talked about getting, like, looking over the past 5 years, right?
No, about if what she's gonna learn if yeah.
I think she's got the mic now.
Yeah, I have the mic. Do you have a question?
So what is the benefit that you see of going to this conference? And
There's a bunch of sessions that I would like to attend in this conference specifically. The turf piece, the stadium, the facilities, all the vendors are going to be there. They're running sessions for me to learn about the best turf to put in or the best stadium layout. So that's all, you know, side information. More importantly is there's a big piece on how to get more parents engaged in our community and stakeholders engaged in our athletic department and what that looks like for our kids. There's other sessions on how to the process of moving middle schoolers to the high school in athletics. There's numerous sessions. There's just 40, 50. There's classes that I'll be attending in that conference, at that conference. So it's just informative how to have the best athletic best practices in the athletic offices with registration, with physicals, and how do other schools get their kids through physicals and grants that might be available to get their kids paid for physicals. So it's just all informative, best practices. not just the turf, not just the stadium, not just the bleachers, equipment. All the vendors will be there to speak about equipment and what best helmets or shuts or Rydell for football with concussions. There'll be a whole concussion impact protocol session. All those are really important factors.
I'm just going to piggyback off of one of the pieces you comment, and I'm not going to speak about our district specifically. But even on social media, especially when you look at Texas, right? Football's really big there. And there is a culture where the football coaches, the American football coaches, are very aggressive with their high school students. There's a viral video of a coach in a hotel room spitting in a kid's face, degrading him, that sort of a thing. So from what I'm hearing, there's going to be best practices. So I'm hoping that we can get some information on how to be a helpful and healthy coach for healthy competition that can be disseminated amongst district staff.
Thank you. Mr. Sabecki?
All right, so I got two points. One is to also, and I understand with like the athletic department, this doesn't just go there, but we do have a lot of local vendors here that also do a lot of that with turf. Vendors that come, they do Vans Enterprises right off of LeBaron in Washington is one of the big ones. They do all the Chicago Cubs. They do a lot of stadiums, turf, all the stuff for a lot of local organizations here in the community and around. As the superintendent knows, I run Gurney Youth Baseball, and a lot of they do all of our work out there too when we bring in stuff. So there are a lot of vendors locally that do major league teams here, and they do host, to reach out to them, they do host a lot of this stuff locally here and bring all the vendors come here also. And my second piece to about like a lot of the administrator professional development and I think this is where we're seeing the problem, is when we have administrators openly say that it's too cold here, that they need to find a conference to go to in a warm weather thing so they can go. And it's been stated. Everyone can shake their head no, it's been stated.
I'm not shaking.
Yeah, from it, and that's what we're talking about. How's it benefiting the students in this district if we have administrators going on some of these conferences and that's what they're openly stating? That it's too cold here in the winter and let's find a warm weather place to go to because it's nice weather. And that has been openly stated here by administrators in our district. And that's what we're talking about.
So, Mr. Sabecki, I hear you, and I think when that happens, you're very good about putting stuff on our radar. So, whoever that administrator is, if you just send a line to us that X person said this, so that we can address that administrator specifically, instead of, administrators that do go for the learning and for the empowerment and to improve practice at the professional development. So I'd like to handle those one-on-one. And if you know who that is, please just send it to me and I will address it and I will update the board.
I think maybe it's something we can look at in terms of creating a framework of accountability, right? So before we went to our CUBE conference and, we don't have board member time during this meeting, so I was just anticipating next meeting, that we would share our takeaways. So if we can have a framework where, and it doesn't have to be a big thing, right? But just sharing in some sort of format 5 takeaways that individuals have when they go to these conferences, that's building that transparency, that's building that accountability, and then when we're using public funding to send individuals out to get that information, the public feels good about it.
Makes sense. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So we are now at item D, renewal of Follett Destiny K through 12.
Can we just get an update on how well this has gone on in the past, because it is a renewal? How has it benefited from us? What are some drawbacks that we've been working with, but we don't have other options that can beat that?
Lori's not here right now, but if there's specifics about the usage, we haven't had any issues with it. This is the one that I believe that she went with this when I started in the district. It suits our needs right now. But again, if there's specifics, I can follow up with you before next week.
Okay.
Okay? If you want to send those questions to me, I'm happy to answer those.
Item E, approval to attend Blue Ribbon School of Excellence 2023 National Conference. All right.
Which one are you talking about?
E.
We were on E.
Blue Ribbon School of Excellence.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's meaningful.
F, renewal Gold Book Toolkit.
This is more of a comment, but from what I understand, this is a really useful tool for those that are newer to our district or newer to the American education system to help write IEPs for our students if they don't come in with solid skills. Is that accurate?
I'm going to, it is a tool for assisting with writing IEPs. In terms of the comment regarding people who are not familiar with the system, I would have to defer to Dr. Bublitz on that because I'm not sure.
And that makes sense. Thank you.
Sure.
Hello, Board, Superintendent. Thanks for bringing that up, Ms. Lansing. This is a great tool, not just for new teachers, but we use it for writing IEPs, present levels. We're currently using it as DL has taken the forefront for providing differentiation strategies in the curriculum mapping, so we can tie that to standards and specific units. So we're using it as a tool for that. It isn't just about writing IEPs.
Okay.
So it's an expensive tool, so we want it to be more dynamic, right? Not just about writing goals. So we're using it for that. And if you look at some of the data, we're trying to increase, they have good support in increasing and identifying student or teacher leaders and then getting them for buy-in to come back to the schools and work with their colleagues and encourage them and help them to navigate the toolbook and then help us write SMART goals, which is one of our department goals. As we know, the research on IEPs, the better the IEPs, that is the number one driver lever we can do to increase student outcomes for students with disabilities is having quality, solid IEPs. So that's where we decided to put our focus. And so right now it's SMART goals and present level pages. So they helps with that, ties it to standards. And just to sum up, we're using it for UDL. And they provided some data, as you probably saw. Teachers love it, and so I'm pretty pleased with it. We'll review at the end of the year with them, with you if you like. If we have, her name's Gretchen. Gretchen comes in, I can let you know. There may be some PD or some informational stuff if you want to see. We can provide that or whatever.
Sorry, it was just more of an affirmation that this is very useful within the district and it's something that we would like to keep using. So I'm glad that you gave the community the background behind that. Thank you.
Yep, no, I appreciate it.
Thank you. There are no further questions around Gold Book. We're now at approval to attend the Lewis La Cosecha Dual Language Conference.
This is a new one.
So actually, Ms. Ambrosio has been sending faculty to it for a number of years. Really? She has, yeah. So there's two that are going this year, and again, this is to support those teachers who are working with two-way dual, one-way dual, one-way dual heritage, and with our other bilingual students. We don't have a lot, and we don't have a lot of attendees each year, but she has been consistent because it is a very good. It's the biggest conference of this type in the country. So, and she praises the supports and the resources available there.
So my kids are in two-way dual language. So we are native English speakers. And in this class, to honor the Spanish-speaking students, they have a place where they learn in Spanish. certain subjects, and then they'll learn other subjects in English, and it rotates every year. So that would be a two-way dual language. But then there's also one-way dual where it's just Spanish-speaking students, and they get both those supports so that they don't lose their native language. And I am a huge proponent of two-way dual language. So any opportunity that we can expand this in the district, I'm going to be supportive of. Are the staff members that attending this every year, are those circulating so that everyone gets an opportunity?
It's offered to everyone. She offered it to our team too. It's just the timing wasn't right. But she spoke for about 15 minutes in our last ASAP meeting to talk about how important it is, and but there are just too many conflicts and we all couldn't attend. So.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
Just because Ms. Lenzing is a new board member, there are some times that if dual language is near to your heart and you'd like to attend with the team, we have previously sent a board member with the team so that they could have that same learning. And I'm just putting that out there because you're new to the board.
Okay.
I see it's in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And see how the amount and the funding source.
So they did a really great job setting that up for you.
It was, I mean, yeah, so. Anyway.
Well, for us, not for you. My apologies.
Yeah, but but we are at the Triple I. Mr. President, on what day in November?
I'm not sure, Ms. Hannah.
What day do you have there, Ms. Hannah? I don't have that on my.
November 7th through the 11th.
This is before III.
Yes.
I believe III is the week before Thanksgiving, so like the
13th-ish, yeah.
or something.
And
So
you don't wanna go?
I gotta save vacation.
Yeah, let's, so if any board members are requesting right now, that's the ask. The information has been presented. If you would like to any board members, we need to know as soon as possible. 5H, approval to attend annual national summit for courageous conversations. Can we click on the agenda item, Mr. White? H. Any questions related to this item? All right.
Are these different people?
yes,
That's
yeah, they're different people.
Are they different people? So, as Ms. Lindsay said, that everyone is getting.
These are different people, and so this is Tasia Fields, it's Barry Schwartz, it's the.
I've heard those names before.
Well, for this specifically, because it relates to diversity, equity, inclusion, and also they're going with the school-based equity facilitators as well. So
The names are listed here.
Yeah.
Dr. Cesario, so just, I don't know if you could see it, so.
I see 'em.
And I mean, this is something, superintendent and board of education, we could always ask in a policy that we restrict conferences to 2 per year.
Yeah.
But that would also be for the board. What is good for the goose is good for the gander. So if we're not entertaining that,
The board is the one,
I would only support it if we were doing it for all. So if there's a true concern and we want to allow people to choose and have that flexibility,
Now, you only one person.
I got to get four. So you have a board member that every time we bring up something with administration or going to a
I hear you
conference,
loud clear, but I'm saying I heard what you said though.
I said we can bring it up as a policy.
It's not a practice.
It hasn't been, but every time. So I just put that out there. Is if we as a board and the administration want to have
better.
a
That's
conversation,
better. We.
Right.
Okay.
Dr.
that's what I said. I said we can, and I said I would propose is that I'm saying I'm not going to support. Brandon will not vote or support anything that restricts what we do for staff and then excludes the board. I don't think that's fair.
Right.
I'm going on record. I'm saying it to the camera. So if we're going to scrutinize and go through each of these and who's going in, fine. I typically only do 2 conferences anyway, so it don't impact me.
Well, so what you saying that what you're saying, which I haven't said anything, but when Ms. Lindsay and Ms. Hannah questioned the idea of what our administrator is going for, is it going to benefit the students? That they have a right to do that.
No issue with questioning it. My point is,
And I never heard either one of them say that they are opposed to administrators going anywhere.
I have.
So can I just add something really quickly, because I think it addresses some of the concerns that have been raised. So this year, I've talked to my team about the attendance at conferences, and I specifically stated that they can go on conferences, but they have to align to the goals of their department, and they have to justify or rationalize how that is happening and how it will impact. So some of the same questions that you asked. And I said, I don't want to limit the number, similar to what you're saying, but I want everyone to be cognizant of the fact that their presence is also required within the district. So it's really important that they're very selective and intentional about what it is that they're choosing and who is attending. Because to Ms. Hannah's point about making sure that we're also sharing this and that everyone has an opportunity to learn and grow is really critical as well. So I've reiterated that point. I didn't want to limit the number, but I do want to see alignment to what their goals are. It shouldn't be to take a vacation I was disheartened to hear that statement.
That's my point.
I just want to.
I felt that was already happening, but there wasn't a level of what I felt like board accountability to believe that is the process. So I appreciate you restating that point. I would not personally want to restrict people's ability to go to conferences. My only point, and I'll reiterate it, is if we attempt or want to do something for the administration, my ask is that the board would do the same thing. Fine, I will not change my stance. My stance is 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 my stance.
Because it's not a practice in this district, never has been a practice.
So we are the authority. We can make the practice.
Yeah, I would, when I first came on the board, I believe I'm correct, Ms. Hannah, Dr. Batiste, the superintendent, wanted board members only to go to 2 conferences a year. That was his practice. That's what I was told.
It was the board. It had nothing to do.
But you just told me that wasn't the practice.
No. It had nothing to do with the Board of Education. Again, it was the superintendent. You all forget, the superintendent is not the boss of the board.
You're not listening to me, so it's okay. We can move on.
Okay, let's
Next item.
Sorry,
Now, look,
apologies.
Y'all get things mixed up.
No, ma'am.
Twisted.
I was very clear. My stance is my stance.
The board is the top hierarchy.
Understood.
And everything under that.
And my point is, if we want to restrict it, we should also put restrictions on the board. You lead by example. I will not change my stance.
I do see Ms. Fields here, so if she's willing to engage in the exercise of explaining what you want to bring back to the district ahead of time, just so we can start that trend of this is what I hope to bring back, and then if you feel comfortable committing to bringing back some takeaways to share.
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. My name is Tasia Fields, Director of Equity and Inclusion. When it comes to the Courageous Conversation Conference or Summit, this year we're bringing some of our school-based equity facilitators. Last year, myself and my manager went. Ms. Hannah, one of the pieces of feedback you gave me was, why are only the 2 of you going, right? So this year we're actually bringing some of our staff that will be in building. So with that, they will come back and share their learning with the rest of our school-based equity facilitators and then align that to our equity framework. Does that help?
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank
I
you.
agree with that, yeah.
I just have one thing, because I'm going to put my personal stance out there. It seems like we do more professional development for administrators and that, and send them, and send them to all these conferences. It's mute. If we don't start seeing these test scores and these grades going up for students, then it's mute. We're educating educators more than we're educating the children. And that's what needs to change.
That's right.
You can go on as many conferences as you want, as long as the test scores and that start going up in the right direction. Now, I'm not talking about 1 or 2% at a time. Right. Then we know that it's getting out there. If we keep sending all these administrators to all these places and our test scores keep going down, what's the point of going to all these professional development? Obviously, it's not being implemented and going down to the students if the test scores ain't moving. That's my stance.
Thank you, Mr. Becky. Next item is, we had courageous conversations. Approval to attend the Council of Administrators of Special Education Conference. There are no questions. J, renewal of Steve Gehring Consulting proposal.
I have a couple of questions on this one. So this is a renewal. And I'm going to throw this out there, and it's not to give any disrespect in any sort of way. I'm just trying to get my hands around this, just as we are as an entire district. So can we just have a brief explanation of what we have already gained from this relationship?
Sure. I think the superintendent, Dr. Nault, myself will all chime in.
Okay.
Steve Gehring Consulting has provided professional development and facilitated team building exercises with our DLT, our district leadership team. Also served to coach a number of the team members. So he conducted one-on-one coaching sessions. So those are a couple of the pieces. I know that he is collaborating also on some upcoming professional development sessions for our DLT. And you want to speak to the next phase of work as well?
Can I
Or
also
go
chime
ahead.
in?
Yeah.
So, because you're in the public sector, I'm going to go from there. It's very important that we have a common language, we have a common brand. And so how we started this work was creating our district leadership team that's made up of your deputies, your associate soup, our directors, right? But when we all have to have a common language and a common way that we approach the work to align our thinking, our how, our what, our when, etc., right? So at the beginning of this iteration was a lot of just team building, because when you have a new superintendent, it shocks the system, a new CEO. So what are our core beliefs? What is our mission? When we say equity, what does equity really mean? Because if we all polled here, each one of us would have a different definition of equity, right? What is our elevator speech as a district leadership team? How do we work together when we're not seeing eye to eye to have discourse that's productive, but also allows you to put your thoughts out there, hold your ground, but yet we walk away and we're still amicable and we can still do the work together. So a lot of time has been spent on that, where I've invited different board members to come visit us, and you'll see that I can be at the table and we'll push back at one another, and you'll see that comfortability, I want to say, but also that trust factor is growing, where I can be like, I don't agree with this. I think it should happen this way, just hypothetically. That's number one. A big piece that we've currently been working on is political mapping. I believe that we're good at why, not the why we're doing something. We could show you data, we could show you the research, we can, get up there and present. But the how, at times, we're tripping over our feet, and we've heard that not only from the board, but from the community. So we've been spending a lot of intentional time this previous year, and you'll look at the contract going in now on political mapping, right? Political capital. When you're actually say you're listening, what does that look like? How does that translate? Another thing that we've done with Steve, now this is just previous, is Mr. Gehring has provided I think maybe 1 or 2 workshops with the board in which we said, if we believe the principal is a lever of change, what does that look like for us in District 60, right? And that really helped us in our stance of when we say our principals are the lever of change, what scope of control should they have, what position do they hold in our district? So Those are all like previous things that we worked on with him, and I will invite you to a DLT, and anyone else who wants to come, not just Ms. Lenzing because you're new, and Ms. Fabian isn't here, so of course that would include her too, so that you can actually see us in the process of the work that we do. So I just wanted to give some context there. Now, Dr. Null, you can add to that.
Good evening, everyone. You guys pretty much covered it. He's been servicing the district. I came to the district in 2018. He's been a huge part of our district leadership team development and some of the things that Superintendent mentioned and Dr. Cesario mentioned as well. The current proposal is for some similar services, as well as helping us implement the African American Male Initiative. There's a lot of things that him and his team are going to help us get off the ground to get that initiative moving in the direction that we want it to move. So,
Can I clarify there?
Yeah.
So they're not going to create the initiative, and I want to be very clear with that. We are going to hire a manager that's going to be more like a project manager that oversees that whole initiative, right? The steering committee, the community will create that, but they're the bakers, right? They're taking Procopius notes, they're going back out, they're putting products out, we're taking them back to the steering committee, or if that's called a task force, whatever that's called. They're looking at that, the board's looking at that, so they're bakers. They're not saying, hey, you need to do this, or you need to do, they're not laying that foundation. And the reason they have to be bakers is because we have many initiatives, our reading initiative, excuse me. We have so many initiatives that we need a baker that can actually produce that. So right now, what you're seeing is for our community, and I am gonna be giving the board an update at our next board meeting on where we are with that, because we laid out a timeline and we are behind in complete transparency. And so what they've helped us do is create facilitator guides on what those community and that discourse looks like. They're not going to hold those meetings. We will internally, but they're creating all those documents. Now they create them, we look at them and say, oh no, this is not what we want, you need to add this. But they also bring a lens, and I'm thinking of Justin, and I can't think of Justin's last name. He does political mapping and networking across the country, and he's helped different, political.
He worked in government at some point.
Government, and how we can think outside of the box. Because what I see is when we have these community meetings or Facebook Live, it's just not enough. We're just not, our reach is not as deep or as wide as I would like it to be. And so how can we go deeper in the work and wider in the work to get more involvement from our community and the many aspects or people that are, community organizations, parents, politicians, whatever that looks like, so that when we are rolling out plans, we have the buy-in prior than trying to get the buy-in afterwards.
Right. Okay. I'm glad. Thank you very much, all three of you, for that, because that's where I was going next, is how does that fit in with the African American Black Male Initiative and what that role is going to look like, because this is going to be very near and dear to people's hearts. And so we just want to make sure that component is transparent, so we're not creating or anticipating something that's not going to be the case. So thank you for that. That was my main point with this piece. Thank you.
Thank you. So the teacher vacancy grant, the information is there. I know that this is important. Unless the board has,
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
I just wanted to acknowledge Dr. Nault, who wrote this grant by himself. And so I didn't get to do that at our last board meeting, so I wanted to give you the credit for this, that he wrote this over a weekend and knew that there was a need and actually got the grant. So thank you, Dr. Nault, for putting your fingerprint on this.
You're welcome. Just a real quick overview of it. We have had several information sessions with staff. We've had multiple people that are interested in these opportunities, so it's great to see that. 77 people as of today have expressed interest in one of the 5 programs that we're offering. So I'm waiting to tally up all the results, because I want to identify some clear next steps for those people that are interested. Unfortunately, there are limited spots for a lot of these programs, so we will have to get selective with who we select to be a part of the grant. But it's a 3-year, the governor has proposed a 3-year grant award. So districts that receive the money this year would, if the funding is available, receive it for the next 2 years as well. So these programs would continue over the course of 3 years. I've talked to some members of the teachers union about it. They're excited about it. They think it's a great retention strategy for us, of course, and it's a great way for us to attract other teachers as well who may be looking to come to Waukegan. So we're excited about it. Thank you.
Quick question and a comment. So I'm really happy that we called you out for bringing funds into the district because it's a grant, right?
Yep.
And I think we should celebrate the individuals as they bring in that work, and calling them out by name, just, it makes me feel good inside. What I understand from grants is there always has to be a manager making sure we're meeting all of those parameters. So as the grant writer for this specific, is that going to be your task, or is that going to be on someone else's shoulders?
The reporting expectations for the grant will fall on me. So
Okay.
there's quarterly reports that I have to submit to the state, and then there's end of the year reports as well that I have to submit to the state. So that will definitely fall on me. Some of the partner universities that we're working with, we're going to be, if you look at some of our next steps we had outlined, is that there's a talent development group that we're going to work with that's going to kind of be the buffer between our district and the universities to handle all the registration into the courses, the FAFSA completions that, I mean, they typically have to apply to these colleges to get into the program. So there's a person that's going to be overseeing that aspect of it. That's a middle person between us and those respective universities. So Mr. Claire's in the process of reviewing that agreement right now. So.
Wow, thank you for putting the work into that.
You're welcome.
It's very exciting.
And I'll be very brief. I just want to, I want to continue to talk about these issues not only in Waukegan context, but in the national context. Between 2009 and 2014, there was a 35% reduction in enrollment in teacher colleges. 2017, schools opened with more than 100,000 classrooms across the country that were staffed with teachers who were not qualified to teach. By 2025, the estimate is 300,000.
Wow.
300,000.
That's rough.
No, I'm sorry. You're correct. The enrollment issue, it's 3,000 vacancies throughout the United States by 2025. Thank you for catching
Yeah,
that.
nope.
Not 300,000. 3,000. But what that
3,000.
means is that is 3,000 based on the current expected enrollment in 2025. So, Superintendent, my only effort is, as we talk about these grants, if we talk about build your own, we also really, really do want to get serious about, and I know you're doing it, but looking at those subs is because not only is it a crisis with the staff, why have we been having the sub issues? And it's because we don't have the teachers. So,
Oh, don't you close out this meeting, because you opened a whole can of worms with that.
go ahead, real quick.
So at the CUBE conference, there was a panel of students that are part of Educators Rising, which is a CTE course. And that is something that's been in effect, and that's something that I want to see here in the district. So if we can look into that, those young women, I'm not gonna lie, I went up, I made a comment, I wanted to cry because I was in their shoes. I wanted to be a teacher. It didn't work out how I wanted it to work out, and I've got that to deal with on my own, right? But these young women there are 3,000 in that program right now. So hopefully that kind of skews it. But as we talk about grow your own here in Waukegan, I would like to see, as we're building out our CTE courses, to look into that. Because, you know, even if we don't have individuals that think they could be a teacher, there's so much more to education, right? And as we're having conversations, young people, if you are watching, with what you're going to be when you grow up, if you're not going to be a teacher, look at ways that you can still support education. If you're going to be a lawyer, how can you be out there getting policy to make sure our schools are properly funded on a federal level, right? Like, there's so many components, not just being a person in the classroom working with their students, which it's a great experience. I highly recommend it. But if it's not for you, there's other ways you can help. So if we can look into that, I'll be really excited.
100%, because pathways is important, and that's what we learned, is that not only do we have a teacher shortage, but many of our policies, processes, and procedures, and even encouragement at the school levels are discouraging individuals from going into education. And so even when we talk about CTE pathways, it's nursing, right? It's, engineering, and those type of things. Very minimal times do you say education.
Yeah.
And in the city of Baltimore, what they did was when students graduated, if they had took some of those classes down at CTE track, they actually had them sign a commitment letter, right? And the district gave them a guaranteed job if they were to pass their test.
Yeah, that's
So
great.
those are awesome things that will help at least us to start to narrow that gap. So with that, I would like a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Oh, no comments?
If you got it, it's
Yeah,
no.
I do have a comment.
Ooh,
yeah.
we're going to board.
And my comment is reference to earlier when we were speaking about the conferences and whatnot. And to apologize to you, I wasn't saying that what you were saying wasn't right about what's good for the gander is good for the goose. What I was saying is that I think that our two board members have a right to express their feelings about individuals when they are going to conferences. But going back to what you were saying, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, because just like we go for the same reason that they're going, and that's to get information to come back to bring to the district to help us to think better and do better with our students.
I think the main concern is just being transparent with that time, right? Because while there may be, a handful of instances of a few of our administrators making these comments, or maybe just one administrator making these comments, the perception is that it's a bigger problem. So if we're having some sort of accountability or transparency measure, that makes the community feel better about this investment, right? And it is valuable information. We just need to understand how that information, when they bring it back, how it's going to impact our students, our staff, our climate and culture, our safety, our athletics department, etc.
Okay.
Thank you. With that, I'd like a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. McBride, second by Ms. Lindsay. All in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Meeting is adjourned.
Yeah.